The Doctor's Claim. A Billionaire Romance Audiobook. Billionaire's Passion Series, Book 1. By Michelle Love and Alize Valentine. Chapter 1. Chloe.
The bus was late getting to our stop, and the half-dozen other people waiting with me were restless. 3 weeks before Christmas, the freezing Illinois air caused every breath I exhaled to turn into dragon-like steam. I imagined telling my future son or daughter that we were descended from dragons, and the idea made me smile a little as I touched my stomach through my thick coat. Just 2 months along now, my baby was a whopping 3 centimeters long. Despite my circumstances, despite the fact that in about 8 hours I was going to need to spill my whole sorry story to my sisters, I was still giddy. My oldest sister Mara liked to say that I had about as much sense as a jack-in-the-box, and maybe she was right, but nothing was going to stop me from being happy about having a little boy or girl as a Christmas surprise. Anxious as I was about confronting my sisters, I also really wasn't looking forward to the 6-hour trip up to White Pines, Wisconsin, but nothing could dampen my spirits, nothing. That is, until I saw the man watching me through the crowd. There was nothing obviously wrong with him. He was dressed nicely enough, and wasn't bothering anyone. It was just the way he watched me, not even bothering to hide it. I'd been using the bus long enough that I could spot a problem, and this man, staring at me like I was a chicken dinner, was definitely going to be a problem. He grinned as if being caught staring was a good thing, and licked his lips. When I scowled, he only laughed, and just as the bus pulled up, he started towards me. The idea of being stuck in a seat with that guy, all the way up to White Pines, was not my idea of a good time. I looked around desperately, as the bus driver ticked our names off of his clipboard, and started loading the bus. There were so many empty seats on the bus, and the creep was practically right behind me. I walked past a college couple and a pair of sisters sharing their seats, then past a mom with a cranky toddler. My eyes swept from seat to seat, searching for an escape. There, beside a man reading a newspaper, there was an empty spot. "Hi. Is this seat taken?" Newspaper guy looked up in surprise, but before he could answer, I stuck my bag under the seat and sat down. "Thank you so much," I chirped and smiled as the creep skulked off to find another seat. "It might have been taken," my new seatmate said pointedly. "At the very least, did you miss the dozen other completely empty seats around us?" A moment ago, he'd merely been my escape route. Now I actually noticed that he wasn't much more than 27 or 28 at most, with sandy blonde hair and dark brown eyes. He wore a black wool coat that looked expensive, and unlike most of the men on the bus who wore jeans and boots, he wore slacks and dress shoes. I realized he looked like a man who should have had a sleek Mercedes or an Audi or something. So what was he doing on a bus to nowhere, instead of flying first class at least? His eyebrows arched irritably. I didn't know eyebrows could be irritable, as he waited for me to answer him. "Sorry about this," I whispered. "There's a creep who looked like he wanted a seat with me, and I'm going to be on this bus for 6 hours. I'll get out of your hair later, all right?" I thought, best case scenario, that my seatmate would go back to his newspaper, grudgingly letting me keep the sanctuary I had found. Instead, his dark gaze sharpened and his frown deepened. "What did he do?" he asked, and I blinked at the slight growl in his voice. "Nothing much," I hastened to add. "It's just he was staring at me and he licked his lips." When I said it like that, it seemed really minor, and for a moment, I thought he was just going to roll his eyes and kick me out of his seat to fend for myself. Instead he nodded, eyes still narrowed. He straightened enough so he could see over the seatbacks, scanning the space like some kind of hunting animal. "The one in the Packers jacket?" "There's like 4 guys getting on in Packers jackets." "Brown hair, glasses, weird little beard thing?" "Ah yes. How can you tell?" He's staring hard at what he can see of you from where he's sitting. I think that's just your foot and your shoulder. Self-consciously, I tucked myself a little farther into my seat. It had the effect of bringing me closer to my seatmate, who was still scowling at the creep behind us. I'm going to go. He started to rise, and a fast vision of a bus brawl raced through my mind. No, don't worry about it, I said, reaching out and tugging his coat to hold him back. I just want to make it to White Pines without any problems. He frowned at me, and then reluctantly nodded. Here, take the window seat, he said gruffly, peeling his coat off. And give me your jacket, I can stow it above. Sir, yes sir, I mumbled, but I did as he said. I did feel safer against the window, and I was more comfortable after I had taken my coat off. That's simply ridiculous, a grown man harassing a girl your age, he growled, and it was such an old man thing to say, coming from such a young guy, that I laughed. How old do you think I am? I asked. I might not have made the most mature first impression, but I didn't have that much of a baby face. He looked me over and shrugged. First or second year at the University of Illinois. I made a face. I graduated from college 3 years ago. I'm 24, I said. Want to see my license? He shot me a very patient look. Have you thought that showing strange men proof of address and identity might be a bad idea? He asked pointedly. He wasn't wrong, and Mara's weary comment about common sense and jack-in-the-boxes ran through my head. I promise you I'm 24, I said. And my name's Chloe. There. Not even a last name, in case you turn out to be a stalker or something, all right? I startled a surprised laugh out of him, and I immediately liked him a little better. When he smiled, it eased some of the lines around his eyes and made him seem less surly. More inviting. If I was going to be utterly honest, it sent a brief ripple of warmth through me, enough to make me want to blush a little. Damn it, I thought. Paul broke up with me 3 weeks ago, this is way too soon. Not for a rebound, a sly little voice replied, but luckily it shut up when he offered me a hand. Alex, he said by way of introduction. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Chloe. Pleased to meet you, I said, taking his hand, and that might have been my first mistake. The moment I touched his hand, large with long, slender fingers and a surprising hint of roughness in a man so well dressed, a spark shot between us. It was like a shooting star, a hot yellow streak through an endless field of blue, shocking enough that I jerked my hand away, wide-eyed. At first, I thought I was just behaving like a freak, but from the startled expression on Alex's face, I could see clearly that he felt it too. Static electricity, he said finally. It's dry in here. Yeah, I agreed, but I sensed that neither of us believed it. Are you going all the way up to White Pines too? Wrong question. His face closed like a door, and even in the warmth of the bus I felt a chill. He might as well have hung a none of your business sign on his face.
Yes, I am, he said curtly and returned to his newspaper.
Well, at least I didn't end up trapped in a seat with a creep, I thought. I pressed close against the window so that Alex would have plenty of room, and because in my hurry to get to the bus stop, I had forgotten to grab any of the books I was reading, I had to content myself with watching the scenery. Because it was northern Illinois, however, the scenery was mostly scrubby, flat, or suburban, so instead I ended up covertly watching Alex, which was much more attractive. He wore a plain gray sweater that looked so soft that I barely stopped myself from touching it. His shoulders were broad, and I could tell that his hips were narrow. He was lean, but there was some serious muscle on him, if his shoulders and thighs were any indication. I sneaked another peek at him, and this time, I froze because he was looking back at me, his dark eyes dancing with amusement at having caught me staring. This time, I could feel a red blush creeping up my cheeks, and I felt about as old as he had thought I was. Mumbling something about being tired, I turned around completely, curling up towards the window. He chuckled, and the sweet dark sound sent a shiver up my spine. I closed my eyes. If I pretended to be asleep, he couldn't catch me doing anything else that embarrassing. Soon enough, reality caught up with pretense, and I was drifting off for real. He's so classically handsome, I thought drowsily, in that random way that happens right before sleep, and then I was gone.
Chapter 2. Alex.
When I looked closer, I could tell she wasn't a teenager. She was still younger than I was, but there was a womanly grace to her, in spite of the way she giggled and blushed. Usually, that kind of thing annoyed me, but for some reason this time, I couldn't help laughing. She turned her back to me and curled into a tight ball, nothing but a loose blue sweater, jeans, and a puff of short, fluffy dark hair in the seat next to me. I suspected she was faking, but sooner rather than later, her soft, regular breathing told me that she was out like a light. I didn't usually find myself drawn to elves, and that was what she reminded me of. She couldn't have been an inch over 5'5", and her blue eyes were enormous and fringed with long, dark lashes, giving her a Gamian quality. That made her harasser's offense even worse somehow, and when she was asleep, I turned around quickly to make sure that I knew where he was sitting. He gave me a confused look, clearly having spotted me glaring at him earlier. And the guy hadn't actually done anything yet, so I couldn't blame him for wondering. I sighed, leaning back in the seat. There was almost but not quite enough space for my legs under the seat in front of me, and again, I cursed myself for not just renting a car in Chicago and driving up, though I hadn't taken the bus anywhere in close to 10 years. Driving would have meant I'd get to the old homestead faster, however, and it would also mean I had nothing to do the whole drive besides being alone with my thoughts. When my mother had asked yet again about when I would be heading home, it had been convenient to tell her I was bound by the bus schedule, which we both knew was late more often than not. Even through the phone, I could sense her disapproval, but she knew better than to try to start fighting with me so early in the game. She might have gotten somewhere doing that with David, but it would just make me hang up and skip everyone's calls for the next 6 months, just like I'd done before. No, she would wait until I was at White Pines, and we were all gathered together like one big happy family before she started on the old song and danced with my father in chorus. I wasn't looking forward to that at all, and I was grateful to Chloe for distracting me from my imminent future for at least a short while. When I glanced over, I saw that she had relaxed a little in her sleep. Now I could see her face, round and with just the barest dusting of dark freckles over her nose. Cute, I tried to tell myself, but that leap of heat when we had touched suggested some other words. Damn, but you're a hypocrite, I told myself. I felt disgusted at the man who had driven her into my arms, my seat, but sitting next to Chloe herself, I could feel a strange pull towards her, something that started at my heart and seemed to spread everywhere else. My thoughts were unruly enough that I wondered what it would be like to kiss her on her flushed cheek, just gently enough that she didn't wake up. Or perhaps she would wake up and smile and hopefully call the cops, I thought bitterly. Geez, but I'm a jerk sometimes. I could have passed it off as being a result of a long time between partners. Jennifer and I had gotten serious until she decided she needed someone more passionate. And Gail had been fun until I realized that she liked being a doctor's girlfriend more than she actually liked me. They were both tall, elegant, ambitious women, a lawyer and an installation artist, respectively. They were my type insomuch as I had a type, but Chloe was blowing that idea to bits. She looked and acted like neither one of them, but I'd never felt a tug of desire quite as strong as that brief flash a few minutes back. I really didn't know what to do with it. I grunted as something jostled my leg and watched with narrowed eyes as the man in the packer's jacket headed toward the front of the bus. He dropped a scrap of paper into the driver's trash bin and made his way back, avoiding my gaze but watching Chloe with that same hungry gaze that had startled her so badly. It was enough to make me want to deal with him right then and there. But just then, as if her sleep had been disturbed by his passing, Chloe whimpered, turned over, and buried herself against my side. I froze for a moment, thinking that the best thing to do would be gently turn her back around. But then I relaxed into her embrace almost against my will. She was a soft, warm weight against me, and now her arm came over my chest, pulling me closer still. She made a soft, satisfied sound that was half enticing, half funny, and fell into a deeper sleep again. I sighed, giving up any ideas of immediate vengeance, and settled down instead against Chloe's sleeping form. She felt almost shockingly good against my side, and I reminded myself again that it was time to find another girlfriend. Maybe it was time for something a little different than the tall and elegant types I preferred. Chloe didn't wear any perfume. The way her head was burrowed right underneath my chin, I could smell her shampoo, something bright and fruity, and underneath that was her own scent, soft and uniquely hers. She smelled like sleep and soap and home, and I couldn't help drifting off myself. At some point, it became natural to throw my arm over her shoulders, gathering her close as I leaned back in my seat to sleep. I woke up to the bus drawing to a stop, and for a moment, I thought we had slept all the way to White Pines. Instead, the driver announced a 15-minute stop in Madison and told us we were welcome to leave the bus as long as we were back in time. He apparently had no intention of keeping to the always late creed. Damn. Chloe must have been exhausted, because she barely stirred at all before turning back to the window. I was momentarily disappointed to feel her warmth draw away, but as her harasser brushed past me again, I decided that it was just as well. Not bothering to put on my coat, I followed him off the bus and to the small shelter, where he proceeded to pull out a cigarette. He regarded me warily as I approached him, perhaps getting ready to defend himself with some kind of protestation that she hadn't minded all that much, or even that he had been paying her a compliment. I had heard plenty of that kind of talk before. It was just as common at a hospital as it is elsewhere. There was no one at the shelter except for the two of us, and everyone else chose to run to the coffee shop across the street. "Hey man, your girl, she's really cute, you know." The whine in his voice made my hackles rise, and I knew that I couldn't conceal the look of disgust that crossed my face. "Don't get back on the bus." He stared at me, as if he wasn't sure that I was speaking English. "What the hell, man?" "I mean it. Don't get back on the bus. Stay here. Pass some time. There will be another bus here, in 3 or 4 hours, that runs the same route. Pay the driver and get on that one." He started to get angry, his brows beetling at me and puffing up like a toad. "Hey, you can't tell me what to." I shrugged, because I had figured that there was a better than average chance it would come to this. As he stepped forward, so did I, and my forearm slammed across his collarbones. I pushed him back off of his feet and slammed him into the plexiglass wall of the shelter with nothing more than a grunt of effort. He yelped, but then my forearm rolled up to his throat, threatening to cut off his air supply. He stared at me, and I smiled mirthlessly. "I can threaten you with all sorts of things if you like," I said mildly. "I could call the police. I could refer you to the bus driver. I suppose I could simply take it upon myself to get your name and start making life difficult for you." He looked supremely nervous at that, and I had the idea that he was wondering who I was and what I could actually do. It was less than what he thought, but his ignorance of the fact suited me just fine. "Or you can just call ahead to let your people know that you're going to be late and take the second bus. Tell them you missed a connection or something. Then you never have to think about this again, and it all ends here." I released him to see what he would do, and after a moment where it looked as if he might have wanted to fight, he nodded, 2 quick jerks of the head. I nodded, because there was no need to humiliate him further, turned and walked back to the bus. From the seat, I watched, and he never left the shelter, not even when the bus driver announced we were leaving. Good riddance. When the bus pulled away from the Madison stop, Chloe stirred a little, stretching out and looking around. Her bleary eyes told me that she would have far rather stayed asleep, and she gazed at me in some slight confusion, something that I found strangely endearing. I had to stop myself from reaching out to tuck a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "What's going on?" she asked. "Are we in White Pines already?" "No, we have another few hours yet. Go back to sleep." "Oh, okay." With nothing more than that, she snuggled up against me again, and this time I didn't hesitate to wrap my arm around her. I told myself that there was nothing wrong with it, that people often leaned against each other on long bus rides, and that after all, she had started it. I must have dozed off myself, because suddenly my eyes opened. It was 3 hours later, and Chloe was stirring under my arm. Feels nice," she murmured, but before she could enjoy herself too much, she came awake with a start, sitting up and drawing away. I was amused to see her cheek, imprinted with the pattern of my sweater, as she looked around in confusion. "I am so sorry," she said contritely. "I didn't mean to sleep all over you like that." "No problem at all," I responded, stretching a little. "I got some sleep as well. No harm done." She looked relieved at that, and her shy smile zinged its way through me, every bit as strong as the previous electric shock. "Thank you for not minding, and for everything, really. That bus trip could have been a lot nastier if you hadn't been here, and so willing to give up the fun of sitting alone." That was when we rolled into the small bus station at White Pines, and I realized that I might not be having much fun for a while. I put that out of my mind, in favor of helping Chloe get put back together, and as we trundled to the front of the bus, she glanced behind her. "Whatever happened to that guy who was bugging me?" she asked in confusion. I could have sworn he was sitting right back there. "Lot of stops between here and northern Illinois," I responded with complete honesty. "He probably just got off while we were sleeping."
Chapter 3. Chloe.
I couldn't quite believe that I had managed to sleep all the way north from Illinois. Usually, when I slept in the car, I would end up tossing and turning restlessly. Now, though, I felt as if I had finally caught up on some of the sleep I had lost last night and in the previous few weeks after learning about my pregnancy. As we disembarked, I turned to Alex. "Thank you again," I said. "I really mean it. And I don't mean to be strange or forward or anything else that might offend your old man's sensibilities." He raised an eyebrow at me. "I'm 30, he said. "Well, you read a paper like an old man anyway, but yeah, if it doesn't freak you out, maybe we could get together while I'm in town? I'm planning to be here for around a month or so." He smiled at that, and just as he opened his mouth to reply, a flurry of motion came off to one side. "Oh, Alex, there you are. I swear, we've been waiting forever and a day. I knew that you shouldn't have taken the bus." Instinctively, I stepped aside to make way for the woman in an actual fur coat to fly by me, throwing herself into Alex with a frenzy that reminded me of a feeding shark. She was tall, and Alex had her sandy hair. I realized I recognized her, and then, with a start, I understood why. She was Rena Reed, which meant that Alex was Alexander Reed, part of one of the illustrious founding families of White Pines. Their money lay in the timber of the northern forests, and they were notoriously proud. Alex looked as startled to see her as I was, and his expression quickly changed to something slightly mask-like and cool. Kind of like the way he'd looked when I first got on the bus before he thawed. "Mother, it's good to see you," he said with a slight trace of irony. I might have kept on watching like a rude hick watching a prince, but then someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind. I turned to see two very familiar faces waiting behind me. Mara was tall and had black hair like mine, but she wore it long and her eyes snapped with green fire. Shannon, born between us, looked as soft and warm as ever, her brown hair tucked under a bobble hat and her gray eyes warm. It was Shannon that hugged me first, and for more than one reason I fell into her arms, holding her tight. Our parents always said that she was the sweetest of the three of us, and after Mama and Dad died a few years ago, she was the one who made all the arrangements and kept us going with food and water when I might have collapsed and Mara would have worked herself into splinters. "Oh, it's so good to see you, Chloe," she said, and I nodded against an unexpected lump in my throat. It had been almost 2 years since I had seen either of my sisters. "If you've got that out of the way, I'm in a tow-away zone," Mara said briskly. "Is that all you brought with you?" Mara was dressed in a long black coat, and she looked as sharp as a knife. Just about everyone was at least a little intimidated by my big sister. She could be a little temperamental, but she'd come to my defense far too many times in the past for me to be too put off. "Yeah, let's get going," I said with a grin. "Wouldn't want you to get a ticket on that shiny car of yours. I mean, I'm assuming it's still shiny." Mara rolled her eyes at the tease. She was OCD about cleanliness in general, but when it came to her car, there better not be so much as a fingerprint on the hood or lookout world. Didn't matter how many miles. Her wheels always shone. As we walked to the small parking lot, I glanced behind me one last time to see Alex being hurried away by his mother, and a younger man I figured must be his brother. We'd only spent a few hours together, but there was something in me that wrenched at the idea of being separated from him. It was idiotic, and I followed my sisters to Mara's gleaming car, which fortunately had not gotten a ticket. That would have been a great welcome back. Shannon gave me the front automatically because I always got carsick, and as she pulled out of the lot, Mara glared at the sky. "It keeps threatening to snow but refusing to," she said. "It needs to make up its mind." "Have you guys been back long?" I asked, and then I hesitated. "Have you been to the place yet?" Shannon shook her head, leaning back in the seat. She had come from farther than I had, and she looked worn out as well. "I got in this morning, and Mara got in just an hour after I did. We've been grabbing some groceries to tide us over, talking with the lawyer." "What Shannon means is that no, we haven't been into Grandma's house yet," said Mara bluntly. "We wanted to wait for you. Do it all together." She winced as if embarrassed to be caught in an obvious fib. "We wanted to put it off," she said with a shrug. "Guess we can't any longer." The drive to the little white house just 4 blocks away from the town center only took a few minutes, but we made the drive in silence. Of course, it was Mara who led the way with her key in her hand, and she walked forward, unlocked the door after jimmying the rusted lock slightly, and flipped on the light automatically like she'd done countless times. "I had them turned back on," Mara explained automatically before I could ask why the house had lights after being empty for so many years. "The water too, since we'll be staying here at least a few days." We crept into the house like invaders or thieves. I set my bag on the floor, and then picked it up again awkwardly. The place echoed a little. A lot of the old decorations and knickknacks that once made it Grandma's house had been removed ages ago, leaving only the furniture. The fridge was unplugged with the door hanging open, and there were faded spots on the walls where the family pictures once had pride of place. "I can't tell if it's better or worse that it looks nothing like what it used to look like," said Mara. "It's different," said Shannon, gazing around us. "It won't be what it was again, but that's not a bad thing at all." "Yeah, I'm not going to miss the little dolls that Grandma collected. Didn't her great-niece, once removed, get those? Those were creepy." Shannon looked slightly scandalized, but Mara laughed. "That's the spirit. We can't tiptoe around this place as if it was a shrine. Grandma's dead and it's just a house now." "Mara," exclaimed Shannon, and Mara shook her head. "Come on, Shannon. Grandma died more than 5 years ago. We're lucky that folks have been taking things out even before it made its way through probate. Fewer things for us to dig through. Shannon blinked hard, and I suddenly realized that she was on the verge of tears. She had been the closest to Grandma, even though we had all spent Christmas up at the house. "That's just typical, Mara," she snapped. "You probably just want to get this place so that you can go back to Atlanta." Mara reared back as if she had been slapped. In a way, she had. Shannon had always been the peacemaker, the one soothing my fears and Mara's temper. For her to attack was more than a little strange. "I'm trying to be sensible, Shannon," Mara said icily. "We're not here to spend Christmas together, or to decorate a damn tree. We're here to look over the property, to decide what we want to do with it. This is a legal affair, not some kind of Christmas special." "Gosh, you're so freaking cold," Shannon said, throwing up her hands. "You're technically the one in charge as far as the papers go. I guess we're just lucky you didn't sell it out from under us." "Seriously, Shannon?" "Adults talk like adults," said Mara, and I could tell that she was getting mean. Gosh, she could get so mean sometimes, and suddenly I couldn't stand it anymore. We'd squabbled and fought as much as any sisters did, but I couldn't take it while we were standing in Grandma's house, surrounded by old memories of when we had once been so happy together. "I'm pregnant." It worked, or at least, Shannon and Mara turned to me with nearly identical expressions of shock and confusion. Mara looked as if I had sprouted wings and a tail, and a look of such longing passed over Shannon's face that I blinked. "Like with a baby?" said Mara slowly. "Well, I hope it's not a puppy or a kitten," I joked lamely. Shannon crossed the floor to give me a hug. "Oh, Chloe." She pulled back to shake her head knowingly. "With Paul?" Paul's out of the picture," I said with a half shrug. "He knows, but he doesn't want to be a part of things?" Shannon made a concerned clucking noise, and Mara's eyes darkened. "Blood tests and a court order when the baby's born," she said. "He has to take responsibility." "No." The sharp tone to my voice surprised everyone, including me. Being a mother-to-be was apparently making me unusually defensive. "I don't want him involved," I explained. "Not after he decided that it might be anyone's baby." Shannon and Mara made almost identical offensive noises, and I nearly laughed at that. "I'm going to be okay. It'll be tight, but there's that little alcove in my apartment, perfect for a crib. The library gives maternity leave, and there's a really nice lady in the building who looks after kids. I have a plan." "There's more to taking care of a baby than—" Shannon cleared her throat pointedly, and Mara nodded. "All right. I think there's a decent crib up in the attic I can drive down for you, and when the time comes, I'll sign you up for a diaper service as a present. I did it for a coworker at the magazine, and she liked it." Mara trailed off, shaking her head, and when she looked at me, some of the prickliness and anger had drained out of her. "Shannon and I were going to be aunts," she said, and I grinned as my grouchy older sister grudgingly hugged me and patted my flat belly with surprising tenderness. Just like that, the tension between the three of us died away. "All right, little one, well done," I thought. 6 months from being born, you're already quite a little problem solver.
Chapter 4. Alex.
I was around 12 when I first realized that the people of White Pines called our family's winter home Dracula's Castle, and heading up the long drive in Mother's Lamborghini reminded me of why. The place belonged to some several times great-grandfather who made all his money and lumber during the good times, and whiskey during the bad, and it had more gables than any one residence should have. 3 stories, 8 bedrooms, more bathrooms, mullioned glass, and a replica Victorian garden in the back. It was one of the most gorgeous houses around. Of course, I hated it. Hate was a strong word, I supposed, but as we got closer, I started to feel the walls closing around me, even in the crisp and bright winter air. I had spent every winter in White Pines at this house, until I turned 18 and could finally beg off. This was my first year back, and it sounded like my mother was going to make the most of it. And of course, there's dinner with the Ganfields, and tomorrow, I was thinking of a luncheon down at the country club. Really show everyone that you're back. Of course, I hope you pack something nicer than those rags. You ought to let Lupe throw them out. Gosh, there's never been any good shopping here, but maybe we can send to that place your father likes in Chicago to have something delivered. Nothing much but a good suit, some nice shirts. I sighed, pulling my bag out of the car and stepping into the heated garage. David shot me an amused and sympathetic look. He had been home a little longer than I had been, but he'd never minded Mother as much. "It's nice to see you too, Mother," I said, planting a careful kiss on her professionally made-up face. She brushed it aside, leading us toward the house, still talking when Father came out to greet us on the front step. Everyone said Father and I look alike, and with every year that passed, that grew more true. We were similarly tall, though his blonde hair was a shade or two paler than mine, and his eyes stared into mine as if looking for anything else that we could possibly have in common. He'd never found anything, not as far as I knew, anyway. "Good to see you," he said, formally shaking my hand. "Your hospital doing all right?" "It's not my hospital at all, but my work is going well," I said pointedly. I'd always had the feeling that they would happily tell their friends that I was the hospital director or something like that if I'd let them get away with it. Having their firstborn son turn away from the family lumber business had been bad enough, but when I'd announced my decision to pursue a career as a trauma surgeon, it had nearly given them both heart attacks. You know, most families were actually proud of their kids who decided to grow up to be doctors. Heaven forbid the Reeds ever follow suit. Father ignored my comment, shepherding all three of us into the breakfast nook for drinks. At least the drinks kept at Dracula's castle tended to be better than average. I barely had time to look around at how exactly nothing had changed when he started in. "Did you think about that offer we talked about back in summer?" he asked, as my mother worried at David's cuffs for some reason while my brother stood patiently waiting, as if he was 5 all over again. "I did, and I told you my decision then," I said with a shrug. "Answer's still no, Dad." He frowned. "That's Reed money. It's not for frittering away on whatever fun you're having in Chicago." I could already feel the tension headache threatening to descend. It was probably just as well that we were usually scattered to all ends of the earth for most of the year. If I had to live like this all the time, I'd be insane half the time and furious the rest. "Last I checked, Great-Uncle Jim left me that money," I said, meeting my father eye to eye. "No riders or instructions to put it back into Reed lumber or anything like that." My father glared, and he might have taken it farther. I almost wanted him to, but my mother descended. "I need your measurements, Alex. I think I'll call the Chicago tailor now. With luck, we can get you some decent clothes for the luncheon. David tells me that the Lundorfs are going to be there, and their daughter Esme is visiting from school. She's a lovely girl, very sweet, majoring in education. Isn't that nice? I'm sorry everything went belly up with that last girl you sent us a picture of, but you know, I never thought she was quite right for you." "Just based on the picture, Mother?" I asked, but she bulldozed straight ahead, plotting and planning right over me. That was familiar, at least. I shot David a dark look, and he grinned at me, shrugging slightly as he loosened his cuffs behind Mom's back. "Better you than me," his look said, and obviously that hadn't changed either. "Alex dear, you're what, 24, 25? It's long past time for you to find someone nice. Settle down a bit." "I'm 30, Mother," I said, and she shook her head in denial of my age as she had for the last 5 years or so, refusing to admit she'd given birth to me that long ago. Any sign of age for Mom was a no-go, even if it meant pretending she couldn't remember her son's birthday. "Oh, surely not," she scoffed. Argue with me all you like, but you can't tell me that your life wouldn't be a little happier and a little brighter with a sweet girl at your side, especially one as lovely and well-connected as Esme Lundorf. She was off again, and no one really had to add anything to keep the conversation going, so we stood around in awkward silence. What she said stuck with me, as a girl I didn't know brought us a tray of snacks from the kitchen. When I thought of a sweet girl, I certainly didn't think of Esme, who had been known as a little girl for cutting off other girls' braids. Instead, I thought of bright blue eyes and a fluff of dark hair, cheeks pink in the cold, and a sassy mouth that just begged to be kissed. Wherever you are, Chloe, I hope you're having a better time with this than I am. I had made plans to stay up in White Pines for 2 weeks, skipping out on the actual Christmas celebration in favor of being back in Chicago. The actual holidays were a bad time for the trauma ward, and I had much more loyalty to my patients and my staff than I did to my family, who couldn't be bothered with any loyalty to me. 2 days, drinks, a luncheon, a party, and a family talk about how dirty Chicago was, and I had no idea how I was going to make it a week, let alone 3. I might have taken off to go on a roaring bender with my brother, but David had actually somehow hit it off with Esme Lundorf, now tall and slender it turned out, and no longer quite so inclined to cut other women's hair, and they were spending all their time in the indoor squash court. On his way past with his racket, however, David had poked his head into the library. "Mother wants you to escort her to some kind of winter garden party viewing this afternoon. She says she's expecting you in something festive. Fair warning." I sighed. I could plant my feet, say I wasn't going to go, start a fight. Win or lose, though, it would be unpleasant, and right then, it seemed far better to simply be impossible to locate. I pulled on the wool coat that I had worn up from Chicago, and a battered pair of old boots that I found at the back of my closet, and headed off into the woods instead. The family house backed onto the Snake River, which circled about half of White Pines. Farther south, it slowed to a trickle and joined the Mississippi, but up in White Pines it was a steady torrent. The other side of the river was a national forest, but the side closest to town sported a thick fringe of woods and a pleasant, if slightly primitive, path along the water. The path was a little more run down than I remembered it being, but it suited my mood just fine. I picked my way along the water and let my mind clear of everything, family included. It must have been a mile or more before I heard the shuffle of steps coming towards me, and then there was a girl walking around the bend. She was small enough to be a teenager, but I immediately recognized her blue coat, the same one that had snuggled up to me on the bus ride. It was nearly the same color as her eyes, and the knit yellow hat she wore over it was like a little spot of sun on a gray day. "Chloe." She looked up at my greeting, and I got a flash of those bright blue eyes right before she missed her step and tumbled right off of the path. With a curse, I lunged forward and grabbed her arm before she tumbled down the long slope that led to the water below. Not soon enough to keep her from falling to her knees on the leaf-strewn ground, however. "Oh gosh, give a girl some warning," she gasped, her eyes huge with surprise, and I shot her a wry look. I thought I had, actually. I set her upright once more and looked her over quickly. She looked fine, but I found myself strangely reluctant to get away. She looked up at me, her cheeks reddened with the cold, her lips slightly parted with the exertion of the fall, and I felt that same surge of electricity go through me again. It would be so easy to kiss her here, but my instincts as a doctor kicked in instead. Those instincts also kept me from automatically reaching out to dust leaves off her, thereby putting my hands all over her. "Here. I'm going to hang on to you, and I want you to try to take a few steps, all right?" Chloe did as I said, and when she put her weight on her left foot, she staggered a little. Sprained maybe," I said, but she shook her head. "It's fine, it doesn't matter." "It really does. We should get you to a..." "Could that have hurt my baby?" I froze, caught as off guard as she had been a minute earlier. There were a dozen questions running through my head, but right now, hers was the most important one. "Unlikely, but it's possible," I said at last. "If you're pregnant, we should definitely get to the hospital. They can tell you for sure what's going on." She nodded bravely, but I could see the concealed panic in her eyes. She might be 24, but there was something unusually sweet and innocent in her eyes, unjaded, something that made me want to comfort her. "We should be safe, but you're probably fine. You didn't fall that far, and you didn't hit anything hard." Chloe found a grin for me, bright and nearly dizzying. "You saved me," she said softly. "Thank you." Her thanks filled me with a warmth I really didn't care to look at too closely. Instead, I looked up and down the path. "Did you drive here?" She nodded. "My sister's car is just a few minutes back that way." "Good. That's short enough that a piggyback ride is probably our best bet." When she started to protest, I gave her an impatient look. "The sooner we get to the hospital, the sooner you can confirm that everything's all right. You're hardly going to break my back." She gave me a dubious look, but reluctantly she consented to climb up on my back, and I set off in the direction she indicated. "You must be a nurse," she said after a moment, and I stifled a laugh as I kept walking. She was a light but dense warmth over my back, and with her arms wrapped so trustingly around me, it all felt strangely right. Arousal danced through me at the feel of her warm body pressed into mine, but alongside it was something more. Something atypically peaceful and content. "Why do you say that?" "Because nurses are the ones who care," she said promptly. "I'm pretty sure a doctor would have just told me to get to the hospital." "I'd argue with you, but I've known too many doctors," I quipped. "Sorry to disappoint, but I am a doctor. Trauma medicine, though, and hopefully that keeps me from being too terrible." "Oh," she exclaimed. "Gosh, what was I thinking? I'd forgotten you're a Reed. I guess you wouldn't be a nurse, would you?" It was close enough to something my father had said when I decided on medical school, something about being no better than a nurse, that I had to blink. "I think I would make a pretty good nurse," I said offhandedly. And somehow she must have sensed that there was some kind of disquiet there because her arms tightened around my shoulders and she nuzzled me like a cat. It sent a bolt of sensation through me when she somehow found a bit of bare skin beyond the collar of my coat, and I wondered if she could feel the way that I shook a little. "I know you would have been a great nurse, and I bet you're an awesome doctor," she said, soundly oddly loyal, and I had to laugh. "I like to think I do, all right." Her sister's car was an exquisitely well-maintained Mercedes, and I was grateful for the size when I loaded Chloe into the passenger's seat. I ignored her protestations that she could drive and pulled out onto the road. "Should I call someone, let them know where you are?" "Oh gosh, no," Chloe said with a shudder. "Mara and Shannon are already going to be upset that I took off without telling anyone, and when it comes out that I almost hurt myself, I'll never hear the end of it." "Well, I meant your husband or boyfriend." She shot me an amused glance from the passenger seat. "So sure it's a husband or a boyfriend? I mean, I might have a wife or a girlfriend." The thought hadn't actually crossed my mind, and when it did, it ended up being an image of Chloe, pretty naked Chloe, wrapped around another beautiful woman. And I banished it immediately because gosh, I could not be that kind of jerk. Could I? "Do you?" She laughed at me, and the sound, soft and bell-like, made me smile like nothing else had in the past 2 days. "No, but I think you're blushing. I thought Reeds were way too well-bred to blush." "Yes, most of my family is actually made of marble. The only reason I can blush is because of a great-aunt, made of ruby on my mother's side." She giggled a little bit at that, and I thought all over again about how much I liked that sound. "Anyway, sass and blushing all aside, is there anyone you want me to call?" Chloe looked down at that, not in shame, I realized, but out of thoughtfulness. No, she decided firmly. I'll call my sisters later, but aside from them, there's no one that needs to know. That sounds like there's a story there. A dumb one, maybe. I was seeing a guy at home, Paul. He was nice enough, but I guess it was one of those situations where it turns out I was way more into him than he was into me. I think he might have cheated on me a few times. Anyway, I got pregnant, and he blew up and said that it could have been anyone's. I honestly thought that that would have broken my heart, but after he stormed out, I felt relief. Do you think that makes me awful? I don't think anything could make you awful. I found that I was surprisingly serious about that, but she laughed and continued. Well, I guess I wasn't into him as much as I thought I was. What I felt for him was like a candlelight that could blow out when a door slammed. But what I feel for this little one. She glanced down at her belly, where she had laid her hands. There was something so tender and loving about how she gazed at her future child that I had to drag my attention back to the road. It made my heart beat a little faster and made me long for something that I wasn't sure I had words for. I was suddenly certain that she had the words, though, and in the back of my mind, I wondered if she would teach me. The love is a tower of fire, and I know it's never going to go out. She said the words simply and sincerely, and I could tell she meant them from the bottom of her heart. Then he or she is going to be lucky indeed, I said quietly. When we got to the hospital, it was quiet, and someone came to see us relatively soon. Patient had never been my middle name, and I'd become even more prone to impatience during my years in the city, it seemed, because it felt as if everything was moving as if it was stuck in tar. Nurses were slow, the doctor was occupied, and I was feeling more and more tightly wound, until Chloe put a small hand on my own. Don't worry, she said. The nurse said that there was no overt sign of trauma. Everything after this is just details. For a moment, I wanted to pull away and run down the doctor myself if I had to, but I knew that she was right. I sat on the hard plastic chair next to her, and surprisingly, she didn't let go of my hand. Her small fingers laced through mine, and I didn't hesitate to wrap my own around them. She didn't sleep, but she closed her eyes, resting quietly until someone could come to see us. I found myself wishing she'd lean into me, like on the bus, but she didn't. I really know how to show a guy a good time, don't I? She murmured without opening her eyes. For my next trick, I'll make you take Mara's car to the car wash. Well, I think you can do better than that, I said with a slight grin. Maybe, give it a try. She opened her eyes just a little, the blue a slight sparkle. Gas station sandwiches? No. Wintertime petting zoo? No. She paused for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was soft and serious, no joke in it at all. There's a star shower tomorrow night. The Geminids. We could go to see that. I'll bring hot chocolate. I would love to, I said, and I brought her hand up to kiss it. I meant it to be light and playful, but that electricity shocked us again. This time, there was no bus full of people to see or an injury to tend to. Her eyes were wide as I reached out to touch her face, but she didn't resist as I moved closer. Miss Becker. We pulled apart like two guilty teenagers, and for a minute I had a very satisfying image of simply pushing the doctor out of the room and barricading the door. Instead, I listened as he gave Chloe the usual cautions and told her to bind up the ankle, to use heat for pain relief, and cold to bring down the swelling. He did an exam that I stepped out for, and when I was called back in, he told us both that there was no sign that any harm had come to her baby, but if she noticed anything unusual, she should come back in. Otherwise, she was free to go. Chloe flopped back on the exam table with a sigh of relief as he left. I'm glad you said yes to the date, she said softly. I'm really glad. She never got to say what she was glad about, because the door opened and her two sisters stalked in. It was fascinating. There was a family resemblance, especially around the nose and the shape of the mouth, but otherwise all three Becker sisters were totally different. "No injuries?" asked the tallest one, her eyes as sharp and shrewd as Chloe's were soft and gentle. She gave me an appraising glare. Chloe rolled her eyes. "No, Mara. I'm fine, the baby's fine." Alex was kind and got to me almost immediately. The other sister turned to me with a slight smile that took her from plain to surprisingly lovely. "Thank you so much for looking after Chloe. And now we're going to talk about you taking my keys and my car, not leaving a note and ignoring your phone," Mara said with deadly purpose, and I almost started laughing. Chloe shot me a despairing look. "Thank you for your help, Alex," she said helplessly. "It looks like my sisters have got it from here. Run while you still can." Despite her position, I could almost see the strong bonds of love that held the three sisters together. It was so different from the strained and bitter strings running between myself and my own family that it was like a punch in the gut. "See you tomorrow night," I said, and reluctantly I walked out.
Chapter 5. Chloe.
I was happy that Alex didn't seem to have any macho hang-ups about letting me drive that night. It turned out that I knew White Pines and the surrounding countryside better than he did, and after a discussion about when we can and couldn't take Mara's car, and look what happened when we didn't know where you were, you could have died, Mara ultimately let me abscond with her precious Mercedes. But not before bring it back in the same condition you borrowed it. Of course, while driving up to the Reed house, I was suddenly reminded of what all the kids had called it years ago. It really did look like Dracula's castle, rising up out of the forested landscape, and I felt just a little like a human sacrifice as I left the safety of Mara's Mercedes and went to ring the bell. A narrow woman in an expensive-looking sweater and black slacks opened the door, diamond earrings glinting demurely at her ears, and a bright, very definitely fake smile on her face. "Oh, you must, Chloe," she said, her voice just a shade too brittle. "Alex will be right down." Instead of letting me step into the house to get out of the late-night chill, however, she only looked me up and down. "So you're from town?" she asked. "Oh no, Mrs. Reed, though we used to spend vacations here. My grandma lived in town, though, and we came to visit all the time." "Oh, I see," she said. "And where did you come from? Alex said that you were on the bus with him." From the tone of disgust in her voice, I could imagine what she thought of the bus, and I couldn't help shuffling a little. "Oh, I'm from this little town just outside of the suburbs, Havenwoods. I work at the library there. We have this amazing program for kids that are slow to read. The school district has had some rough times, and this project really gets kids invested in reading." I knew that I was babbling, but I couldn't stop myself. Under her sharp eye, I felt as if every piece of me was under scrutiny, and nothing was passing muster at all. "How nice," she said a little sharply. "Alex is, of course, a doctor in Chicago."
"Yes, I know," I stammered.
"I mean, I know because he..." Before I could make a further fool of myself, Alex appeared, looking almost achingly handsome in a dark coat and dark jeans and boots. He smiled at me for a moment, before shooting a grimly amused glance at his mother. "Why, Mother, for a second there it almost sounded like you were proud of my chosen career path," he said dryly. He led me back out before she had a chance to respond, and in just a few minutes we were on the road again, with me behind the wheel this time. So your mom doesn't like the idea of you being a doctor?" He shot me an amused look that still didn't manage to hide a hint of real frustration and pain. "It's a bit of an old and tired story, but yes. I didn't even have the self-respect or family loyalty to go into anything like research or cardiology. The Reeds did not expect to have a son who liked mucking around in trauma wards. I'm just going to be proud if my kids decide they want to save lives, I declared, focusing on the dark road in front of me. Doesn't matter to me how they want to do it. I jumped a little bit when Alex reached over to touch my shoulder, gently. There it was again, that rich warmth that passed between us, and I remembered how close we had come to kissing at the damned hospital. I loved Mara and Shannon, but I could have smacked them both for coming in when they did. Of course, they had both laughed their heads off when I told them that, but the point stood. I think you're going to be a good mother, he said, and the unusual softness of his tone left me halfway to melting. Thanks, I said. Sometimes I worry about it. Before we could get into the many hundreds of fears I had about being a single mother, I saw our turn up ahead. This driveway leads about a mile back into the fields and woods, to an old foundation. No one's got any reasons to use the foundation at all, so it ought to be great for us. I pulled the car over in a small field, and as Alex watched in bemusement, I pulled an old quilt out of the trunk of the car and spread it on the ground. Our breath was steaming in the air, but it wouldn't be too bad, I thought. After watching for a moment, Alex stretched out on his back next to me, and as if we always did this, he reached out to take my hand. This is adorable, he chuckled, and I bristled a little bit. Look, I'm sorry if this isn't as exciting as all the nightclubs and soirees in Chicago. The closest I get to Chicago nightlife is when there's a shooting at a club, and I need to patch people up, he said with a laugh. This is wonderful. I would have responded with something snarky, but then a yellow streak crossed the sky so fast that it would have been lost if I blinked. Oh, I saw one. I yelped, pointing up at the sky with my free hand, and Alex turned. I think you're fibbing, he started to say, but then we saw the next one, bright, vivid, and gone in a heartbeat. It was the peak of the Geminids, with one or more falling stars every minute, and we watched them in rapt silence, only exclaiming when we saw one that was particularly bright. As we watched, I became strangely aware of Alex next to me. It was as if there were magnets within us, dragging us together through the sheer natural force of gravity. It was inevitable, and fighting it felt like the worst kind of nonsense. Somehow I had grown closer to him over the last half hour, my hip pressed to his, my ankle knocking against his. Or perhaps he had grown closer to me. When I glanced over at him, I realized he had been watching me for a while. In the dark, it was impossible to read his expression, but I could feel the hunger radiating from him, hunger and need and something almost wistful. You're brighter than any star in the damn sky, he muttered, and it was so cheesy that he flushed but also so obviously sincere, that I couldn't have kept myself from kissing him just then if my sisters or even aliens had dropped down in the field beside us. I pulled him over me, leaning up to brush my lips over his. It was electricity and heat, sweet and lovely, and then he came over me again, his mouth hot and more insistent this time. He carefully held his weight over me, leaning on his elbows so he wouldn't crush me, but the kiss was consuming and claiming. When I felt his tongue trailing along my lower lip, I opened my mouth and gave him the entrance he was craving. You taste even sweeter than you look, Alex whispered, framing my face with his big hands. I felt overwhelmed by the power of him, and the heat of our bodies together. He kissed me for a timeless moment, and then his mouth trailed down to my throat, tugging my scarf aside so he could get to the warm skin there. I moaned in surprise at the sudden pleasure of his lips pressed against such sensitive skin, and that small sound only seemed to encourage him all the more. He returned to ravishing my mouth, as his hand worked at the buttons of my coat. Damn it, it's freezing out here, he swore suddenly, hands still. Well, winter in Wisconsin, I said. Alex, I don't want you to stop. For a second, I thought I had convinced him. I had a flurry of images of us making love here in the open, under the falling stars, struggling with my coat and his, deciding which bits we could afford to have frozen off, which we still needed, and then he shook his head. If we ever want to try this outside again, I'll think about some kind of tropical getaway, he growled. This is too damn cold. Come on, pretty girl. He swiftly refastened my coat and pulled me to my feet. For a brief moment, I thought that we were just going to say goodnight, but then he pulled me in for another quick, hard kiss. Where can we go? He asked. You know White Pines better than I do. I'll take you to my place, I said, and as we got back into the car, I wondered why that single line made my heart skip a beat. The house was quiet and dark when we got back. I remembered belatedly that my sisters had decided to go to an art night in White Pines' tiny downtown. Despite how dark it already was, it wasn't too late, and they probably weren't back yet. Alex looked around the house curiously as I led him up to the tiny attic room that had always been mine when we came to stay as teenagers, but he didn't say anything until the door was closed behind us. Nice place, he said, looking around. It was almost Spartan, only containing some bookshelves, 2 dressers, and the narrow iron bed that I had slept in since I was a girl. I was suddenly glad that someone had gotten the random rack of dolls out of the place. I had liked them when I was little, but now, about to hopefully be intimate with the most handsome man I had ever known, I was pleased that they were gone. Now that we were alone in this warm place, however, I suddenly felt awkward. I fumbled with the buttons on my plaid shirt, feeling unnervingly awkward and young, and I could feel myself blushing as I swore. Alex chuckled, but before I could even get embarrassed that he was making fun of me, he drew me close again. When he kissed me, I forgot about everything. There was nothing more important than feeling the warmth of his mouth, the press of his body against mine, and the way his breath fanned my cheek. Hey, he said, smiling into my eyes. No need to be nervous, all right? This is good. I'm going to make you feel so good. I started to respond to that, but then his long, clever fingers, surgeon's hands I thought hazily, were unbuttoning my shirt. He moved quickly, but when the shirt hung open, he took his time easing it down off of my shoulders. When it fell to the ground, he looked at me solemnly in the light of the moon that came in the window. I resisted the urge to cover myself. Paul had always said that I was shaped like a 14-year-old boy, but when I looked at Alex's face, I could see nothing but desire and pleasure in looking at me. Gosh, but you're beautiful, he murmured, stepping closer until his face nestled in the curve of my neck. For a moment we just breathed together, his warmth against me, grounding me, before his lips began to trail along my throat and down to my collarbone, each kiss sparking an ache I hadn't expected. His hands fumbled briefly at my back, and then the clasp of my bra gave way. It slipped to the floor, joining my shirt, and suddenly I was bare before him. So very perfect, he whispered, his voice low and reverent as his fingers brushed over me with a tenderness that made me gasp. I had always thought my body too small, too ordinary, but in his touch I felt cherished, as though I'd never again doubt myself. I think I need to see all of you, he said gravely. I couldn't help a little giggle. Oh really, doctor? Do you think it's serious? My teasing drew a laugh from him, and then his arms wrapped around me in a hug so fierce it seemed to drive out every shadow, leaving me filled with light. Gosh, but you can be a brat, he murmured, though his voice was threaded with affection. Oh well, if that's all. My protest turned into a squeal when he scooped me up and dropped me gently onto the bed. Instead of joining me right away, he slid my jeans down, guiding me to lift just enough to help before nudging me back. When I was finally laid bare, he paused, just standing there, his gaze moving over me as though I were something rare, something worth treasuring. I want to see you too, I whispered, my voice trembling with anticipation. The truth of it surged through me. I couldn't stand another moment without touching him, without seeing him revealed as openly as I was. He nodded and began to undress, moving with a quiet efficiency that made me smile. In moments, his clothes were in a careless pile on the floor, and he stood before me, uncovered, unguarded, something raw and vital about him. Lean and strong, he carried himself with a kind of primal energy that pulled me in. Without thinking, I reached out, tracing a line down his chest, memorizing the warmth and shape of him beneath my fingertips. When he settled beside me on the bed, too small for him, too narrow for us both, we pressed close, our bodies fitting together in a shared heat that felt more perfect than comfort. He kissed me again, slow and unhurried, his hand gliding down my side as if he had all the time in the world. I gave myself up to the kiss, to the way he held back even with his whole frame tense with need. It was as if he would have been content to do nothing more than kiss me forever, and that thought alone sent a shiver through me. But I couldn't resist touching him in return, learning him, testing the ways he responded to my hands, the little sounds that escaped him when I pressed closer. His soft gasp in my ear, his quiet groan when I lingered, each one thrilled me, until I was trembling with the same urgency that thrummed through him. "Gosh, you're going to undo me," Alex breathed, his voice rough, before he suddenly rolled me beneath him, his breath hot against my ear. "Do you like this?" he murmured, his tone playful and edged with something darker. His teeth grazed my earlobe, and a jolt of lightning shot down my spine. I clung to him, gasping, unable to answer with anything but a whispered, "Feels good." His hands moved over me with a mix of tenderness and hunger, drawing out waves of sensation that built higher and higher. It was different this time, not something I had to reach for or guide, but something that rose naturally, unstoppable, carrying me with it. "Please," I whispered, half-broken, needing him. He pressed me down into the bed, his mouth claiming mine in a kiss so fierce it stole my breath. And then he joined with me, the connection so complete it silenced everything else. For a heartbeat we stilled, caught in the wonder of it, before moving together as though we had always been meant to. Every movement sent the fire in me climbing higher, until I was lost in it completely. His eyes on mine, his body against mine, his care for me even in the wildness of it. The release came like a storm, sudden and overwhelming, bursting through me until I could do nothing but cry out his name. At last, he shifted just enough to draw me against his chest, gathering me into the circle of his arms. The warmth of him wrapped around me, and with a quiet rise and fall of his breath, I felt myself drift toward sleep, safe and utterly complete. "We should get under the covers," he said, and I smiled at his practicality. "Are you just inviting yourself to stay the night?" I asked, and he paused, considering. "Should I not?" "No, I want you to stay. I'm just being a brat. It got such good results before." He growled playfully at me, but he still covered me with a blanket, letting me nestle next to him. The bed was really far too small for two people, especially when one of them was as large as Alex, but right then, nothing in the world mattered at all except being close to each other. We drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, and when his hand drifted over my belly, I smiled.
Chapter 6. Alex.
The next morning felt like a continuation of some kind of dream. Chloe woke me with tiny kisses scattered across my jaw, and soon we were tangled together like giddy teenagers, tripping over each other in the tiny shower, muffling our laughter so her sisters wouldn't hear, though the clatter of shampoo bottles probably gave us away. Even when the rusty showerhead tried to take me out, or when a razor nearly took a slice out of my arm, or when the biggest shampoo bottle I'd ever seen landed squarely on my foot, none of it mattered, because Chloe was in my arms, holding on to me like she never wanted to let go. When we finally managed to stumble out, dripping wet, and running for the bedroom like kids caught in the act, it hit me just how far gone I already was. More than halfway in love with this woman I barely knew, yet who somehow fit perfectly in my arms, in my heart, and in my life. And then that gorgeous, sweet, maddening woman kicked me out. "Sorry," Chloe said apologetically, handing me my pants just when I was about to tumble her into bed once more. I froze in confusion, and she laughed, leaning in to steal a quick kiss. "Don't look like that." She rested her forehead against mine, beautiful eyes twinkling. But my sisters will only give us so much leeway before they decide they're entitled to emerge from their rooms for breakfast. Chuckling, I held up my hands in surrender, even though they wanted to reach for her bare body, still deliciously warm and damp from the shower. Okay. I know when I'm not wanted. Reaching for her own clothes, Chloe shot me a hungry look that almost undid me right then and there. Oh, you're wanted. And if we have to get a hotel next time, so you don't have to leave, we will. Then she smiled and handed me a phone to call a cab, but it was fine because she'd said next time. My parents were still asleep when I slipped into the house, but David was fresh from a workout in the small gym in the basement. He saluted me with a glass of something green and unpleasant looking. You look like you had a good night. I did, I said with a smile. I had no intention of sharing any details with him, but I didn't see the harm in agreeing. That's one of the Becker girls, isn't it? Mother was talking about her last night. Someone mentioned that they were back in town. There was nothing intrinsically wrong with my brother's words, but something about his tone made me scowl. Yes, she is. They're here to decide on what they want to do with their grandmother's house. David chuckled, and it occurred to me how very far apart we were. He was almost 10 years younger than me, and for a good chunk of the time he was growing up, I was in medical school. White Pines girls are great, he said. Towny girls. They think going down to Madison is like being taken to Paris. They don't mind slumming it in parked cars. And they think that if you get them dinner at that greasy burger place on Shaw, that you're really into them. Good for a cheap night out. I stared at him for a moment, wondering when my father's voice had suddenly started coming out of David's mouth. Are you serious? I asked, and he laughed. Hey, I love them, he said. I have ever since I stopped worrying about cooties. White Pines occasionally throws a looker, and it sounds like from how mad Mom is that you got a pretty one. Works for me, I like Esme just fine. He threw a quick salute at me before heading for the shower. He had a date with Esme that day, and he needed to look his best, but suddenly I thought that I would much prefer him with a black eye or maybe a split lip. He's just joking, I told myself. David's barely more than a kid, and he says all sorts of dumb things. It was a cruel thing to say, and I wasn't used to my brother being cruel. Or maybe he was, and you just never noticed. I stripped in my bedroom, and when I saw the small red marks that her nails had left behind, I smiled, touched them a little, and the tension slipped away. Being intimate with Chloe was extraordinary, but what was even more amazing was that I wanted way more than that with her. The way I wanted everything. As I was changing into clean clothes, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, hoping it was Chloe. Weirdly, it was David. Why is my brother texting me when we're in the same house? I said, to no one in particular, reading the message. Esme's hot, right? I'm not slumming. The realization that my brother really was the jerk he appeared to be made me faintly sick. She's gorgeous, I answered. And you're a jerk. Really? I'm not too good for her. Man, she is way too good for you, I texted back wearily. When did you mutate, Dave? So you don't see Chloe as slumming? I was so livid that I hit send before my thumbs finished tripping over themselves. Unlike your feelings toward Esme, I'm too good for her. Told you. That's not what I meant. I'm not too good for her. Chloe is amazing. And if Esme is as smart as I remember her being, she'll run screaming from you. Esme's mean. I like them that way. He stopped texting at that point, and I was glad, because I was ready to track him down and break his face. After changing into clean clothes, I decided to borrow one of the cars in the garage, head to town, and look for a present for Chloe. It somehow seemed like the least I could do when my family was just so utterly clueless about how great she was. Before I could get very far, however, My mother buttonholed me in the den, smiling in a determined way that made me immediately wary. "It's so nice to have you home again," she said. "I don't know if I've told you that yet." "Actually, no, you haven't." "You never do," I said wryly, but she bulldozed ahead as if I hadn't said anything. "And the holidays are just an amazing time for family, aren't they? It's a wonderful time to remember who's really important, and to let what's not important fall to the wayside. It's so easy to get distracted during the year." "Is there a point to this?" I asked, and she shot me an exasperated look. "I just wanted to make sure that you were fully aware of the holiday party on Friday. You can be a sly one, Alex, and I don't want to get to the day and find out that you somehow forgot, or that you slipped off to go stargazing or some nonsense. There are people attending who haven't seen you in years, and your father and I have had to make excuses for you for too long." She looked at me expectantly, and reluctantly I nodded. I had never been a huge fan of my family's stuffy holiday parties. They were full of people who liked nothing better than to show off how much better they were than the rest of the world, how much richer, better educated, and intelligent they were. Medicine, at least trauma medicine, was a great equalizer, and it made these get-togethers increasingly grating. Still, I was in White Pines ostensibly to see my family. "Fine, I'll be there," I said with a sigh, and she nodded, apparently satisfied. As I turned to go, however, I saw her narrow her eyes at me, as if uncertain or frustrated with something I couldn't see. I didn't ask. She could bring it up, or we could ignore it. Downtown White Pines was unexpectedly busy for a weekday afternoon. It was a rustic spot, but there were plenty of small artisan shops, and people were obviously shopping for the holidays. I was just on my way to the town's only flower shop when my phone rang. "Hi. So, I don't know if it's okay to call you. We slept together, so at least we should be on texting terms, I think."
Chapter 7. Chloe.
Thank God, he chuckled at my rambling. I stretched out on my bed in my clean clothes, on the same sheets Alex and I had made love on, and grinned from ear to ear. "Well, given how we spent last night," he drawled, "I would say that we're definitely on texting terms. Hell, I might even be so bold as to suggest we're way past that." "I thought I probably shouldn't call you," I admitted, simply because telling Alex anything that came to mind felt oddly natural. "You know." "Because." "I don't know," he replied. "Why shouldn't you call me? People on beyond texting terms should definitely call each other constantly." The grin stretched further yet, making my face ache. "Because I don't want to come across as needy." He growled a little, and I swear I damn near swooned. "I like you needy. You should always be needy for me, Chloe. It doesn't matter if I've known you for 5 minutes or seen you 2 seconds back. You needed me, which makes me close to insane." I am in so much trouble, I thought to myself. "Alex, we've honestly only known each other 2 seconds." He cut me off. "And those 2 seconds have meant more than 2 years I've spent with previous women. I mean it, Chloe. It's insane, I admit, but I'm all in. 100% in, baby. Are you?" I bolted upright in bed, hand resting over my stomach. "Yes. Yes, I am, Alex, my gosh, yes. But the Bab?" "Meet me at Malarkey's on Shaw," he interrupted. "As soon as you can. I'll be waiting. Don't leave me out in the cold too long, honey." I flew to Malarkey's. Honestly, I don't think the cab's tires even touched the road once. I shoved money at the cabbie and tumbled out, looking around until I spotted Alex, perched on what was probably a frigid bench. He saw me at the exact same moment I saw him, and then that movie moment thing happened between us again when his eyes met mine. Alex walked up to me and held out a single red rose framed by baby's breath. For you, he said simply, then drew me into his arms and lowered his head for a long, slow kiss that turned my insides to mush. I whispered into his lips when I finally caught my breath again, looking up into his dark gaze. Alex, this is insanely fast, you realize? I do realize. His thumb brushed the curve of my jaw lightly, touching me with tendrils of heat. But what would be even more insane is not acknowledging that there's something between us, Chloe. Yeah, I acknowledged incoherently when he kissed me again. Okay, yeah. This is so not good, I finally sighed, sinking into his tight embrace. Alex drew back with a frown. Why not? Oh, probably a lot of reasons. But the first one is that I'm already losing my mind, and pregnancy brain hasn't even started yet. He flashed a fast, wide grin that did illegal things to my heart rate. I want to see you with pregnancy brain, he said simply, tucking my hand in his and guiding me into the best burger joint in the county. He didn't let go, even as the waiter guided us to a booth. Nope. We sat down, and Alex was still clasping my hand in his, so I went ahead and gave him my other one, even as the waiter took our orders. Are we gonna share a spaghetti plate? I inquired. Better believe it. My middle name's Tramp. He winked, and whatever part of my heart wasn't already his fell hard and fast. You remember Lady and the Tramp? I demanded.
Nobody remembers that movie.
Especially not guys. Alex shrugged one broad shoulder. Like I keep telling you. There's something between us, Chloe. And if you think I'm going to let that slip away, you're dead wrong, sweets. I'm liking these endearments, I decided, pressing my palms to his and admiring how much larger his hands were than mine. I like you, he said softly, pressing my hand to his cheek. Tell me the truth. Am I moving way too fast? I laughed. Yes. Completely. As his face fell, I hastily added, but I like it, Alex. I'm not a take it slow kind of girl. Never have been. You're right. It's really, really good between us. We just have a few issues that are kind of, well, between us. He raised an eyebrow, clearly waiting for an explanation, but I waved a menu at him. Can we pick first? I'm starving. Someone gave me a workout this morning. With a smirk, he allowed me to peruse the menu, and we even managed to place orders for mega-size burgers. His rare, mine medium, his fries curly, mine sweet potato before we returned to the topic at hand. Sweet potato fries? He shook his head sadly. I'm disappointed, Chloe. Only because you've never had them here, I retorted. Try kissing me after I've had a bite of that cinnamon sugary goodness, and tell me you don't love them. Challenge accepted, he promised. So, things between us? Besides your appalling choice of sides? Some of my giddiness faded, and I fidgeted with my napkin. Well, you know. I gestured vaguely at my midsection. That's one thing. You're saying you're all in, Alex, but I'm not going to look like this much longer. I held up a hand before he could cut in again. Far more importantly, in 9 months, it's not going to be just me. You're not the baby's father. It's not fair to ask you to stick around for parenthood, not before you even know enough to decide whether that's something you might eventually be interested in. He was silent for so long after that my heart sank, and I finally muttered, well, you could say something. Anything. I was waiting to see if you were finished since I kept interrupting you. Are you done? At least somewhat relieved, I nodded. Yeah. Yeah. Please. Talk.
Chapter 8. Alex.
The look of uncertainty on her beautiful face made my gut twist. I nudged aside the sodas so I could lean in closer, recapturing her hands in mine. Chloe, I said gently. Look at me, honey. Slowly, her face tilted back towards mine, finally meeting my gaze for the first time since she'd gone off on the baby tangent. "This isn't what I expected," I began, squeezing her fingers. "At all. Not gonna deny that. The woman of my dreams walking onto a greyhound and demanding the seat beside me." She laughed a little, blushing prettily. "But you did," I went on. "And yeah, the baby is an unexpected factor, but the bottom line is, he or she is part of you. And I'm crazy about you, Chloe. So, one way or another, I'll learn to be a parent." "I want to be a parent," I added, as the realization settled over me. It never occurred to me to think about kids, but with you, it's just totally natural. "It fits," I said quietly, meaning it with everything in me. It's like, I don't even have to question it or wonder about it. You fit perfectly in my life, Chloe, and so does Alex. Both our heads jerked toward the sound of my shouted name. My eyes widened as David jogged straight into Malarkey's, a place I was sure he'd never sat in before in his life, and made a beeline for our booth. "David, what?" "Dad went into the hospital 40 minutes ago. I've been calling your phone for an age." The ride to the hospital was a blur. David didn't bother to tell me how he tracked me down. Chloe and I crammed into his stupid small sports car, so tiny that she was practically in my lap, and we sped across town, somehow avoiding the usual traffic cops. Then we were on the small hospital's doorstep, and I was sprinting toward the Probably, David and Chloe were following, but I was solely focused on Dad. It shocked me how concerned I was when my dad and I had no relationship whatsoever. "But I guess your father's your father, no matter what." "Leonard Reed," I told the charge nurse. "He was just brought in." With a hospital this small, and a family as notorious as mine, there was never any question about Dad's identity. The nurse nodded immediately, without even checking her records. "This way." She led me down a yellow hallway, nowhere near as bleak as the walls that framed my usual workplace, and pulled back a curtain. To my immediate surprise, I spotted my father sitting up in bed, shirt off, his chest covered in electrodes, haranguing an intern. Seeing me, he broke off and cursed in apparent relief. "Alexander. Finally. Will you tell this idiot that I require a full—" He waved his hand uncertainly. "Whatever it is you call it." "Workup," the intern supplied, looking like he was trying not to roll his eyes. I was familiar with the feeling when it came to Dad. I've been trying to explain to Mr. and Mrs. Reed. "Your mother is so distraught that she's had one of her episodes," Dad informed me. "Mrs. Reed is being attended to," the intern went on wearily. "As I was saying, we've ordered every recommended test." While he talked, I took the clipboard from him and half listened while studying the various studies they'd ordered, along with the notes on my father's condition when he was brought in. "They want me dead," Dad howled with rage as the intern wrapped up his narrative. "This town has been waiting for me to keel over for decades in hopes of getting its hands on my money. Well, I'll have you know." "You're not dying, Dad," I said dryly. "What it looks like you may have is some heartburn, courtesy of your crappy diet and total lack of exercise. They're doing all the necessary tests to rule out any dangers, but those tests don't happen in 5 minutes. I'm sure they've told you that you'll be kept overnight." "I should be here for a week," he snapped. "Heartburn. I knew that doctor training was an utter waste of my money." "It wasn't your money," I reminded him. "I got a full ride. Now, if you'll excuse me, I should check on Mom." I stepped past David and wondered briefly where Chloe had vanished to, but my whole focus was momentarily on dealing with my family's madness. She would understand, I was sure. That was the kind of person I already knew she was. It wasn't hard to find Mom. I could hear her histrionics halfway down the hall, and just followed them until I walked into the room where she was hyperventilating, waving off every attempt by medical staff to calm her. "Don't give me sedatives. I'll die in my sleep." It would be a miracle if the hospital didn't poison both my parents' IVs before the night was through. Shooting an apologetic look at the doctor, who was just exiting the room, I joined my mother at her bedside. "Hi, Mom." "Alex." She grabbed my hand and dragged me close with a grip that no dying woman would ever be able to approximate. "This is my son. He's a doctor. He'll know how to care for me properly." "I don't have the slightest idea how to do that," I said bluntly, worn out by the sheer insanity that was my family. "Mom, you know you get these spells. You work yourself up, and then they subside just as quickly as they begin." Indeed, the spells dated back to the earliest days of my childhood. Whenever Mom was unhappy with my clothes, my choice of food, my grades, my date, even my athletic abilities, a swoon would conveniently occur. "I need my medicine," she said peremptorily, referring to some stupid vitamin or other that she'd started taking a decade back and was convinced held the cure to every ailment. "You can't bring outside medications into a hospital, Mom. If you need medicine, they'll figure out exactly what and provide it." That set her off on a wild rant, and all I could do was sink into a chair, lock eyes with a sympathetic nurse, and wait for it to end.
Chapter 9. Chloe.
I jumped to my feet as David walked into the lobby, sipping distastefully at a cup of coffee. "Honestly, this has to be hot water and food dye." "How is he?" I asked urgently. The hospital staff had headed me off at the pass when David had informed them that I wasn't family. I'd been sitting waiting for what felt like forever, praying for some kind of good news. "They," David replied, trying another sip and making an identical grimace to the one he'd walked in wearing, "are fine." "They," I repeated uncertainly. "Mother and father," he clarified, tossing the full cup into a trash can. "Come on. I need something with actual caffeine." "What about Alex?" I asked. "And I thought it was just your father?" "Alex is dealing with mother," David replied, taking my arm and steering me toward the exit. "He'll be in there for a good while, so there's no point cooling our heels here." Bewildered, I allowed myself to be led outside, where David stopped and considered various restaurant options in the vicinity, before apparently deciding on one and starting across the street, half dragging me. "What happened to your mother?" I asked. He rolled his eyes. "Father was having a cup of coffee, a good cup of coffee I might add, during a business meeting. He's always had acid reflux, but refuses to do anything Alex or the doctors tell him." I noticed immediately that he didn't class his brother as a doctor, and wondered why, but I decided now was not the time to ask. We stopped at a crosswalk and waited for traffic to slow. He also had a massive breakfast full of everything he's not supposed to eat. So, in the middle of his meeting, he started feeling this heavy ache in his chest. My arm clasped firmly in his, David guided me across the street toward Java Joe's. "If you're not aware, my family has a tendency toward melodrama." He panicked, and that probably worsened the heartburn. He collapsed on the floor, and Mother was right there with him, shrieking hysterically and screaming for her own doctor. I blinked, trying to take all that in as we walked up to the takeout-only coffee joint. While David ordered, not bothering to ask if I wanted anything, I felt a deep sadness well up inside of me for Alex. My family had been far from perfect, but the chaos David had just described was nothing I'd ever experienced, not even on our worst days. Much better. He smacked his lips around what looked like a cappuccino, and finally actually looked at me. "So, you're into Alex." Stepping up to the window to order something to ward off the cold, I studiously avoided his gaze. It was so unlike his brother's. So cold. So judging. Oh, sorry. Here. I've got it. What do you want? David elbowed me aside and shoved a wad of cash at the cashier without even asking the price. Oh, hot chocolate, I muttered. Not a fan of coffee, he asked archly. Why, I told him. I don't know, but I did. Caffeine isn't good for babies. David's eyes went wide for just a second before his usual narrow-eyed gaze reasserted itself. Aha, he said thoughtfully as the cashier handed over my hot chocolate. I cupped my hands around it, cold in more ways than one. Aha. I repeated. That explains your interest in my brother. If I'd been taking a sip right then, I'd have spat it out all over myself. Thankfully, I'd barely lowered my nose for a sniff. Excuse me? David smirked. Don't play act with me, Chloe. My family is very familiar with your type. My type, I repeated, strangely numb in the face of what was very definitely some kind of insult. Usually, I'd have let him have it with both guns blazing, but this was part of the issue I hadn't had a chance to discuss earlier with Alex. Hangers-on, he elaborated. People in need of our class. And our cash. Behind us, the cashier coughed violently, and David swung around, probably to give him an earful. I took my chance and started away at a fast pace, but not fast enough. A moment later, he was beside me once more. Don't take it like that. We have. You don't. It's natural for you to want it. How is Alex even from your same family? I muttered through clenched teeth. Oh, Alex is no saint, he promised me, and I could see his perfect grin from out of the corner of my eye, leering at me. You do realize that you're just a project for him. Now I stopped and turned to face David head-on, my temper finally flaring. Excuse me? Somehow, it was one thing for him to tear into me, but for him to start in on his brother. He laughed. Look at you. Already thinking you're in love with him. Worse yet. Probably already thinking he's in love with you. Let me save you the heartache, sweetheart. The Reeds don't love commoners. Alex went to medical school to save the world, not to marry it. You're one of his little projects where he feels like he can redeem himself, somehow, by pulling you up out of the gutter. The problem was that Paul's walking out on me had cut more deeply than I'd let on to anybody. I'd thought he was so into me, and then he wasn't. So there was a chance that I might be making the same mistake again with Alex. Right? Poor Chloe, David droned on. Let me take you home, sweets. It'll save you all kinds of heartache. Stress can't be any better for the baby than caffeine, right? I wanted to douse him in steaming hot chocolate. I really did. I was so close. If you don't believe me, here's the evidence. Before I knew it, he'd shoved his phone under my nose. It was a conversation between him and Alex, and much as I wanted to tear my eyes away, I was paralyzed. Esme's hot, right? I'm not slumming? She's gorgeous. And you're a jerk. Really? I'm not too good for her? Man, she is way too good for you. When did you mutate, Dave? So you don't see Chloe as slumming? Unlike your feelings toward Esme, I'm too good for her. Told you. Honestly, the conversation didn't even make sense. Something was seriously off. But all my brain saw was I'm too good for her, I'm too good for her, I'm too good for her, I'm too good for her. David patted my back sympathetically, and I didn't even have the strength to pull away. My mind was whirling with feelings of betrayal, warring with the belief that Alex was better than this. I knew he was. Except, I didn't. That had been the whole thing earlier, when he'd halfway told me he loved me and wanted to raise my baby with me. My eyes filled with tears. And I'd tried to remind him that we barely knew each other. Right this way, David said quietly, and I stumbled along beside him in a daze. Somehow I found myself in his car, and somehow, I found myself back on my grandmother's doorstep, with David waving to me as he pulled away. "You're making the right decision, Chloe," he called. "For you and your baby. Alex has no part to play in your lives."
Chapter 10. Alex.
I should have walked out on Mom. And after I finally did, I should have walked out of the hospital rather than going back to check on Dad. I had no connection with them whatsoever. I'd spent most of my life with them, and yet I knew Chloe better than either one. But they were my parents, and I wanted to help, even though several decades should have told me I couldn't. By the time I finally walked into the lobby, bone-weary, and having accomplished nothing more than making my parents A, angrier, and B, even more certain that my degree was a sham, all I wanted was to find Chloe and hold her close to me. No talking. Not even necessarily any kissing. I just wanted to be with her quietly, and I knew she'd understand exactly that need. Chloe understood everything. Except Chloe wasn't in the waiting room, and she didn't answer my call or my texts. "You were here for hours," David pointed out, as he strolled into the waiting room with a fresh cup of coffee. "If you're looking for your girl, I'm guessing she split." "No," I said firmly. "Chloe wouldn't just walk like that." He snorted and handed me the coffee. "Here, drink that. Maybe it'll thaw your brain. You don't know the girl, Alex." I gave him a look, even as I gratefully sipped the coffee. "Since when have you done nice things, like remembering other people might need caffeine?" "I'm a nicer guy than you think," he shrugged. "Look. It was like 5 hours you were in there. No girl who isn't married to you or seriously dating is going to wait around that long." "Chloe's different," I insisted. "And you say I'm selfish?" David said archly. "Dude. Pregnant lady. Exhausted, maybe." "How do you know she's pregnant?" I said in surprise, feeling guilt creep in at the truth of his words. "She told me," he replied. "Right before she hit on me." My free hand clenched into a fist. "Nonsense. Don't even go there, David. I mean it." He rolled his eyes. "Why?" "Because you don't believe that your bus girl might just have a thing for the Reeds rather than you. She's not like that. They're all like that, big bro. You'd think Chicago would have cleared up some of your chronic cases of naivete." The girl acted all heartbroken for a little while, and then she was suddenly all over me. I lunged for David, splashing searing coffee everywhere, and biting back a scream of pain and fury. He danced back, his face grim. "Think about it. How else would I know about her pregnancy, Alex? She's desperate for someone to raise the kid. Someone with money." The remains of my coffee splashed all over his shirt, and my left hook collided powerfully with his right temple. Then I was out of the hospital, driving away from the Reed family drama as fast as I could. I didn't believe a damn word out of David's mouth. Sure, I didn't know why he knew about her pregnancy, but I trusted Chloe. I hadn't realized up until that moment how much I trusted her above anyone else in my life. It was irrational and borderline insane, but hey, insanity clearly ran in my family. Following that insanity, I took a sharp detour, ran a fast errand, and then jumped back in the car and hooked it toward Chloe's. She had to be there, waiting to find out how my parents were. True, I couldn't figure out why she wasn't answering my calls, but she'd have a good reason. Pulling up in Chloe's driveway, I jumped out and was halfway to the door when her sister, the short, soft one, walked outside, arms folded across her chest. I slowed and waved tentatively, unsure what had changed the expression on her previously friendly face. "Hi. Is Chloe in?" "No," she said flatly, then didn't contribute further information. I scratched the back of my neck, uncertain. I'm not sure if she told you what happened. She told us. You have some nerve showing up here. If Mara were around, you'd have a rifle stuck halfway up your behind. I blinked in shock. Wait. What? You don't understand. I understand plenty, she said tersely, every line in her face so rigid that it was obvious she was fighting back rage. You've known my sister for all of a few days, and yet somehow you still managed to wipe the floor with her heart, worse than when the father of her baby walked out on her. I did what? I exclaimed in shock. Wait a minute. Look. My parents were both taken to the hospital. Chloe went with me, and I guess they didn't let her because she wasn't family, so I kept her waiting for hours, I know. I'm really sorry. But they were my parents. And she's my sister, the woman, Shannon, I finally remembered, cut in coolly. She showed us the text. So you can quit your crap. Text. I echoed. What text? She didn't answer any of my texts. As I spoke, the Mercedes pulled up suddenly in the driveway, peeling in so hard that it kicked up a cloud of dust. Out of the Mercedes climbed tall and sharp Mara, her eyes blazing as she headed straight for me. You better run, boy. Exasperated, I threw up my hands. What the hell? All I want to know is where Chloe is. Don't you presume to curse at me on my own land. Mara snarled, walking up and poking me hard in the chest with nails like talons. Not after you left my baby sister close to a zombie. When I loaded her on that bus, she was so lifeless I worried for her baby. Bus? Tired of echoing everyone's words, I finally spat out my question. Look. I have no idea what the fuck crap is going on here, other than that Chloe isn't here. For some reason, you all think I've hurt her. But I would never do that. See. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out the small jeweler's box and popped the lid so they got an eyeful of the simple but brilliant ring. It's not super fancy, because I didn't think she'd be into that. But it sparkles. Like her eyes. So why would I get her this if I didn't love her? If I didn't want to commit to her? Both Mara and Shannon had actually gone silent for a few minutes. When Shannon finally spoke, her tone had thawed very slightly. You don't even know her. I know her enough to love her. And you're telling me that she's on a bus. Headed where? I asked desperately. And why, for God's sake? The look the two women exchanged between them sent chills down my spine before Mara finally said, You better come in.
Chapter 11. Chloe.
The bus was louder than the one I'd taken earlier in the week, what seemed like a full century back. Having left my phone at the house and practically everything else, I had nothing to block the sound. So I wrapped my head in my sweater and tried to sink into some kind of coma, where there was no sound and no pain. No vision of Alex dancing in front of my eyes, typing out those cruel words. Too numb to even cry, I rested my palm over my unborn child and whispered, Just you and me, little one. Somehow we'll make it work. Just like we were planning before he walked into our lives. Technically, I'd walked into his, I had to admit. I'd forced myself into the seat beside his, and now I was paying dearly for my temerity. I didn't ask to love him, I whispered to myself. That was never part of the plan. But I had, almost immediately. Something about that stupid newspaper, his immediate surly attitude, followed by the shift to total protectiveness, had reeled me in like a fish. And now I was left flopping on the line, struggling to breathe. Gosh, what a morbid image, but it was exactly how I felt. He'd played me for a total fool, gotten me in bed almost instantly, and then laughed about it behind my back, undoubtedly just waiting for me to head back to Chicago, at which point I'd never hear from him again. The air beneath the hoodie was getting stuffy, so I finally shoved it back and took a deep breath in. The noise was still there. Screaming baby in the back, arguing couple on my left, someone's non-soundproof earbuds in the near vicinity, venting misogynistic lyrics every which way.
You okay?
My seatmate asked sympathetically. He was a gray-haired guy actually, someone I could see reading a paper. His face was creased and kind, almost making me tear up. But not quite. I couldn't let go until I got back home. Then I'd wallow for a few days before picking myself up and moving on with my life. I'm fine, I mumbled, reaching for the water bottle Mara had insisted I take if nothing else. You've been tossing and turning for over an hour. He shook his head. Doesn't seem fine to me. Has it been that long already? I scrubbed my eyes in disbelief. Sorry, have I kept you awake?
You're fine, he assured me.
I rarely sleep in automobiles. Leaves me queasy. Nodding, trying to remain polite while utterly uninterested in conversation with anyone, I squeezed past him and stumbled down the aisle to the bathroom. Predictably, it was less than clean, but at least I managed to wash my face and even attempt to square my shoulders in the mirror, giving myself a stern lecture.
You didn't know him.
Whatever you're feeling is an exaggeration, probably because of your pregnancy hormones. You may have thought you loved him, but you didn't. And even if you did, he was way out of your social stratosphere. There was never any chance, kid. Just deal with it. Shaking my head and trying to force myself to believe, I stepped out of the bathroom and discovered, to my surprise, that we were stopped. With relief and more than a little confusion, I stood in the back and watched everyone on the bus, screaming baby included, vacate the premises. The driver glanced at the way I was protectively holding my stomach, something that was becoming more instinctive by the minute, and nodded. You can stay on the bus, miss. We're having some mechanical trouble, and just sent for another bus to come to meet us, so you all can transfer onto it. Go ahead and get yourself some rest while it's quiet. Gratefully, I sank down into my seat, minus my chatty seatmate, and reached for my hoodie once more. Time must have passed. I wasn't sure how long, but I actually managed to doze a little until my seatmate returned and gripped my shoulder, shaking me, clearly telling me to move out of his window seat. It was just so much easier to rest when my head was pillowed on the glass, rather than my own shoulder though. Chloe. Chloe. Damn it, Chloe, wake up. I frowned and blinked away the sleep, wondering how my seatmate knew my name. Leave me alone. Just a little more sleep, please, then we can switch seats. Chloe. The abrupt change in volume had me shooting upright. I shoved the hoodie away in alarm, and suddenly everything swam into focus. Alex stood in the aisle, his jaw set grimly. No. You're not here, I muttered. I'm on a bus, headed home. Honey, your bus left a good while back, he replied with a note in his voice that I couldn't decipher. What are you talking about? We were going to transfer. And they all did. You slept through it. And now you're awake, and you and I are going to talk. What? I said in horror, scrambling to my feet and almost smacking my head on the overhead baggage rack. No. I need to be on that bus. No. You need to be with me. Alex blocked my exit from the seat, his big body preventing me from any chance of a sneak getaway. You hurt me, Chloe. I hurt you? I said in amazement. Please. I saw the texts, Alex. I know you played me. I thought we knew each other, he said quietly. In spite of only, knowing each other a few days. I really thought we got one another. So did I blurted out, tears rising to my eyes and starting to slip down my cheeks in spite of my earlier resolution. Honey, I didn't write that message. Or rather, I did, but not the way you think. Pulling out his phone, Alex pushed it into my hands, and then stood there waiting. I don't want to read it again, I whispered. Please, Chloe. Give me a chance. Just one chance? The pleading in his tone broke me, and with extreme reluctance, my eyes blurred so I could barely make out the screen that I glanced at the words I'd memorized. Esme's hot, right? I'm not slumming? She's gorgeous. And you're a jerk. Really? I'm not too good for her? Man, she is way too good for you, I texted back wearily. When did you mutate, Dave? So you don't see Chloe as slumming? Unlike your feelings toward Esme, I'm too good for her. Told you. That's not what I meant. I'm not too good for her. Chloe is amazing. And if Esme is as smart as I remember her being, she'll run screaming from you. Esme's mean. I like them that way. I read and reread the words, tears still dripping down my cheeks before the penny finally dropped. Oh. Dismayed now in a totally different way, I looked up at Alex where he still stood, his expression totally blank. Oh. Alex. You should have trusted me, he said gruffly. It kills me that you didn't. It makes me want to throw in the towel just like you tried to, because I believe that you, of all people, believed in me. I do believe in you. I blurted. Oh my gosh. Alex, please. My entire family thinks I'm a failure, and essentially a washed-up nothing. The people who are supposed to know me best think I'm gutter trash. I believed that you knew me better, Chloe. The sad look in his eyes killed me, but he kept talking. But you know what? Of course you didn't know. Because the truth is what you kept trying to tell me, at Malarkey's. We don't know each other. Not deeply anyway, however much we connect. I covered my mouth with my hand, outright sobbing now. Alex. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's okay, he said so quietly that I almost didn't hear him. I raised my head from my chest and stared at him through reddened eyes. Huh. I said it's okay, Chloe. Because you may not know me very well yet, but I plan on spending the rest of my life helping you get to know me. As he spoke, he got down on one knee in the tiny aisle and held out his palm. On it sat a box. A box with a ring. A brilliant, sparkling, movie star ring that made my mouth go dry, even as I cried harder still. I love you, Chloe. He looked up at me, his eyes so warm and tender that if I hadn't already been a red, sniffly mess, he would have reduced me to one. This isn't a marry me. I know it's way too early for that. This is a get to know me. You can say yes to me later on down the line. But just know that yes is the ultimate goal. I love you, and I love your baby. And that is never going to change. Please, Chloe. Will you get to know me? It was way too early, yes, but that didn't make one bit of difference as I also knelt awkwardly, wrapped my arms around Alex, and kissed him over and over again, my tears promptly soaking him. I love you too, I told him over and over again, framing his face with my hands. I love you so much it's ridiculous. And I'm sorry, I didn't trust you. Forgive me? I forgave you for stealing my seat that first day, he teased, kissing my nose, eyes and cheeks before finally, tenderly, drawing me into the sweetest kiss. I'll forgive you for anything, Chloe. Just get to know me. And let me get to know you in every single way. Yes. I held him close to me and whispered the words into his lips, laughing and crying at the same time as he slid the gorgeous get-to-know-me ring on my finger. Yes. Yes. Yes.
The end. Sneak peek for The Doctor's Nanny. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Doctor's Claim by Michelle Love and Alize Valentine. Now please listen to a sneak peek for The Doctor's Nanny by Michelle Love and Ivy Wonder. Chapter 1. Alex.
A soft rain fell as I made my way into St. Christopher's General Hospital in Seattle, Washington. I was there to meet with the board about getting rights to practice in the hospital, but I wasn't looking forward to pleading my case to anyone. She died a year ago, and I was ready to move on with my life again. Yet, there was some opposition to me getting back to work. Not many men bury their wives when they're only 29 years old. Rochelle had all the money in the world, but none of it could save her from ovarian cancer. She left me and our daughter, 3 years old now, and the empty space she left felt enormous. I was tired of looking at all the places she'd left empty, her side of our bed being at the top of that list. A woman's smile greeted me from behind the information desk. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" "I have a meeting with Doctors Kerr and Dawson." I ran my hand through my hair, then shoved them both into my pockets. "Which Dr. Dawson?" she asked. "We have 2 of them. His first name is Harris." "Who's the other one?" "His wife, Dr. Reagan Story Dawson, is a cardiologist here." She looked through the notepad on the desk, then pointed at the hallway to the right. "Down that hall, the second door on the right." She took a sip of coffee. "Dr. Alexander Arlen. That's you, right? You have a meeting about getting privileges. I look forward to seeing you around." As I straightened my tie, she checked for a wedding ring, of which I had none. "I haven't got the job yet, miss." "Miss Sandoval." "Lydia Sandoval," she said. "Single." "Okay." I turned to leave, feeling a little awkward about the exchange. "And you," she called out cheerfully after me. "Same." I didn't want to get into my personal situation any further, afraid she might ask me out, and I wasn't ready to go out with anyone. Not yet, maybe not ever. I loved my wife. The last 2 years of her life were spent in and out of the hospital and doctor's offices. Those years were miserable for her and me equally. There was nothing left in me to give to anyone else. Maybe time would help. All I knew was I needed to get back to work, my work, or I'd go crazy. As I walked into the small conference room, the 2 men scheduled to grill me were already there. Both tall and lean, they were standing as I walked in. One of them extended his hand. "Dr. Harris Dawson, Dr. Arlen." "Nice to meet you, Dr. Dawson," I greeted him, then held out my hand to the other man. "And you must be Dr. Jonas Kerr." "I am." He shook my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Arlen." Dr. Dawson took a seat. "Let's put all this formality aside, shall we? I'm Harris, and this is Jonas. Is that okay with you, Alexander?" "Call me Alex." I took a seat on the opposite side of the table from the 2 men. And dropping formalities is great with me. Jonas wore a smile as he asked, "How was the trip into town, Alex?" I had flown our private jet from Spokane, where we lived, to Seattle. I wanted to get out of that city. Reminders of my wife were everywhere. It proved to be maddening. It was fine. I made it in record time. The wind was with us. Harris nodded. "And if you're approved to practice here, would you relocate to Seattle?" "I would. I should be honest with the men. Look, you might know about my wife's passing. Living in Spokane just isn't the same. Everywhere I look, Rochelle is there in some form or another. I need to get out of there." The 2 exchanged looks. Then Harris asked, "How about your daughter, Alex? You'd be taking her away from family, wouldn't you?" "My wife's parents live in Spokane, about a mile away from us. They probably didn't want me to leave with Tabby, but I had to do what was best for myself. I'd given up a lot during the last few years, and it was time to get back on track. My daughter would be fine with me and my choices. We shared a mutual adoration that told me she'd be great as long as she was with me." Looking concerned, Jonas asked, "Moving may adversely affect your young daughter, Alex." Having her mother's parents in her life is important. Do you suppose taking her away is the right thing to do? My daughter, her name's Tabitha, she and I have a special bond. I've cared for her all alone since Rochelle got sick immediately after her birth. She's not as close to her grandparents. Rochelle's parents weren't always around. They traveled extensively, and when not doing that, they were involved in all kinds of events. Being from old money, they had their hands in all sorts of charitable organizations. It kept them pretty busy. Harris got right to the point. You must have inherited your wife's fortune, Alex. From what I've read about the Vanderhavens, their net worth is in the billions. Your wife was their only child. I'm sure her portion of that wasn't chump change. He was right. When Rochelle passed on, I'd become a very rich man. While more than comfortable financially, I'm not the kind of man who stops working because he has enough money to do so. My brain needs more than that. Being a neurosurgeon himself, Harris should empathize. His nod told me he understood. I have a more than comfortable financial status that has nothing to do with my work as a doctor, so I understand where you're coming from. But I wasn't responsible for a young child on my own either. So my next question is, what will you do with young Tabitha when you're working? I'd thought about that a lot, more than anything else. I'll hire a live-in nanny to help me with Tabby. Jonas nodded as he smiled. That's good. I'd hate to think of your daughter having to go to daycare after losing her mother. She needs a stable female presence in her life. If not her grandmother, then a nanny, the right one of course, would be best. I thought so too. That's another reason to get away from Spokane. My in-laws aren't around much. Tabby needs a woman's influence in her life. A nanny would help immensely. Harris still seemed skeptical. What about your family, Alex? Is anyone available from your side to be that female presence for your daughter? I shook my head. No sisters, only one younger brother. And Mom and Dad have their own things to do. They live in Colorado. The three of them moved there after the legalization of grass. They have a dispensary there now. Jonas grinned. One of those kinds of stores? Yep. My family got into the trade, and business is very good. While I'm happy my family has found their calling, it's not the right kind of world for my kid to grow up in. Not that I'm judging. I just want a different life for my child and me. Harris agreed. Yeah, I can see that. So, you've been thinking about this for a while. You're not making any rash decisions or running away. You just want to change your life a bit and get away from all the reminders of a lost love. Yes. I was tired of living in the place I once shared with the woman I'd fallen in love with, practically at first sight. It's time to start fresh. And I'd love to make that fresh start right here with you guys in this hospital, where I can help the most people while still having time for my daughter. How much time would you need to relocate and get settled here, Alex? Harris asked. Good question. He's considering me. A month. It would take that amount of time to find a suitable home and a babysitter, too. I wouldn't leave Tabby with anyone but the one I hired. I want her to feel stable and safe. Having her doted on by too many people would undermine her security. I didn't want that. Harris tapped his pencil on the pad of paper in front of him. We'll give you 2 months to be on the safe side. He looked at me. I'm a father too. You'll need time to make sure your daughter is settled well with the new living situation and her nanny. So we'll see you here in 2 months. If you need my advice on finding adequate housing, check out Janelle's real estate agency. She's a natural when it comes to finding homes for Seattle's more affluent residents. Jonas gave me another big smile. Welcome aboard, Dr. Alex Arlen. I can't thank you two enough. I got up, shook both their hands, and felt a smile plaster across my face. This is such good news. You have no idea how excited I am to be coming here. Jonas stood. The rain isn't going to bother you? I love it. I never minded the rain. The smell of it invigorated me in a way little else did. I can't wait to get things in order and get my life going again. It's been an eternity since I got to be me. Well, it's not just you, Alex, Harris reminded me. Keep your daughter at the top of your list. I am. He had no idea how much at the top Tabby was. Tabby's my only link left to Rochelle. She's the spitting image of her mother. It's funny when I see things around our home and the town she had so much to do with, I feel sad. But when I look at our daughter and see her mother in her, it makes me happy. Jonas looked at me with sad eyes. I can't imagine what it must feel like to lose someone at such a young age. No one expects to be 30-something and a widower with a small child. No, you don't. If anyone had told me Rochelle and I would only have 2 years of marriage before she was stricken with a cancer so fierce nothing could combat it, I would have said they were crazy. Harris patted me on the back. Life will be different here. No ghosts to torment you, Alex. No ghosts? Did I truly want to leave Rochelle behind? Our bed proved to be a place I hardly ever rested anymore, because I felt her in it. I would wake up, think I could hear her breathing, then reach out to find no one there. In a new place, a new bed, I wouldn't feel her there. Is that what I really want? Am I ready to do this? Or is this a terrible mistake?
Chapter 2. Kai.
The bathroom's free, my roommate Carla called out to me. Thanks, Carla. Grabbing my clothes for the day, I took my turn in the bathroom. 4 of us shared the 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment I leased after my graduation. I got my bachelor's degree in early childhood development, and now I just waited for my first opportunity. I signed up with an employment agency that specialized in finding jobs for au pairs. And I already landed my first interview. A new doctor had moved to Seattle and needed a live-in governess for his 3-year-old daughter. As I showered, I tried not to get my hopes up too high. That job must be coveted by many. To reside in the posh house of a doctor would be like a dream come true. I'd grown up in a modest home in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood. My father worked as a parts manager at a car dealership. Mom worked at a health food store as a cashier. I worked my way through college with a job at the same store as Mom. Living at home allowed me to pay my way through school and avoid getting into debt to get my degree. I had Mom and Dad to thank for that. Well, them, and some sacrifices of my own. I sold my car and bought a bus pass instead. Making payments on the car and insurance didn't leave me much, so getting rid of it allowed me to spend more on my coursework. Plus, I always took my own sack lunch and never went out, choosing to use my funds on opportunities. After college, I continued working at the store for another year. With no debt, I was able to move in with my friends at their steady coaxing. Carla was my bestie, and she said I wasn't being true to myself by living at home. She claimed it stunted my natural human growth. My lack of experience with any type of physical intimacy seemed to concern her. Carla was a psych major, and emotional health was of utmost value to her. She claimed I wasn't emotionally healthy. I pushed back that one does not need intimacy to be emotionally fit. She didn't believe that whatsoever. Carla considered intimacy a mandatory experience. She made sure to experience it with all sorts of people, including females. I wasn't into that type of experience. In my opinion, my innocence didn't define me. Apparently, to some, it was something you got rid of as soon as you got the chance. Not me. I wasn't about to have sleep with someone I didn't have feelings for. It was too personal to do with just anyone. A knock on the bathroom door had me speeding up. I'm almost done. Okay, try to hurry please, my other roomie Lane said. I've got to pee. Having only one bathroom sucked. Without putting the conditioner in my hair, I got out and dried off, hurrying to get dressed and out of the way. Looking at my reflection, I wasn't going to look my best for the interview, but being so rushed, I had no choice. Leaving the bathroom, I went to my bedroom to put my hair into a bun and a touch of mascara on my lashes before leaving the apartment. A cool misty rain fell from the sky that morning. It was invigorating and made me feel better about the day. Everyone looks dewy in this type of weather, not just me. As I walked to the bus stop, I tried not to think about the interview. I worried that this father might pick someone older and more experienced. At 22 with no practice, my chances were slim to none. However, the lady at the employment agency said that the interview experience was beneficial to me. It may help me to do better in future interviews. Getting off the bus at the employment agency, I started to feel a little sick to my stomach. My nerves surprised me. I never had an interview before. Not even for the job at the store. Mom arranged that for me. I had nothing to do but show up. A shiny black Jaguar sedan was parked in front. I instinctively knew it belonged to the man who needed a nanny. He had to be even wealthier than I imagined. And now the butterflies in my stomach swarmed me so much, I ran to the agency's bathroom first. My cheeks were flushed, so I splashed some cold water on my face. Looking in the mirror, I gave myself a pep talk. Look, KY, this is just practice. You're not getting this job, so be cool. Get this over with and don't freak out. You don't have the experience to get this work. This is like we practiced back in school. It's all pretend. With that idea in my head, I dried my face and then went out to let the receptionist know I had arrived. She'd seen me dash into the bathroom and looked disapprovingly. And your name is? Kyla Rush. I didn't know what to do with my hands all of a sudden, and stuffed them into the pockets of my blue jeans. I'm here for an interview with Dr. Arlen, for the position of governess. Her eyes scanned my body. Wearing jeans and a sweater? Scanning my clothing choice, I hadn't found it to be bad. The jeans aren't ripped or dirty. And the sweater covers my chest. What's wrong with it? The woman, who looked to be in her 40s, only shook her head. Kids. And there it was. I knew I'd never get the job. Not when I looked like a kid. Who would trust a kid to take care of their kid? Certainly not some rich doctor. I'll take a seat, I told her, then walked away, not interested in being judged by her any longer. I mean, who does she think she is anyway? 40-something, and just a receptionist at an employment agency where she has opportunities to take better jobs? I couldn't let her get to me. And this was only a practice run for me, anyway. So what if she didn't think I was dressed appropriately? The outside door opened, and a woman walked in, wearing a dark blue dress that went below her knees. Her shoes were flat, blue, and sensible. The creases around her mouth looked like parentheses. She was all of 50, and looked it. I'm here to see Dr. Arlen, for the au pair position. The receptionist smiled, looking pleased with this new candidate. Oh yes. You must be Mrs. Steiner. Your experience is outstanding. Yes, it is, the woman agreed. She looked around the room, empty but for me. I received only the slightest glance before she looked back at the receptionist. Are we the only people being interviewed for this position? There's one more, the receptionist informed her. A man? Looking down her nose, the professional nanny seemed unimpressed. A man? I see. She went to take a seat, on the other side of the room. While I played a game on my cell phone, she looked out the window at the rain that had become a bit more than the light mist it had been earlier. Then her gaze fell on me, and I looked at her. "Hi." She nodded. "Hello." When the door opened again, and a tall thin man came in, she sighed, and I gathered she'd seen the guy before. He looked directly at her and sighed too. "So you've got an interview too, Sally?" With a nod she said, "Yes. I had no idea you were free from your duties to apply for this position. What happened with the Ventura children?" Sheila quit her job to stay home with them when Emily started wetting the bed. He went to the receptionist, his hands running over the front of the suit he wore. "Manly Jones will interview with Dr. Arlen." "Yes, sir," she told him. "Take a seat. Since you're all here, I'll let him know and we can start the interviews." He walked over to sit near the other woman, and I saw he was nearer to her age than mine. "And what has you free, Sally?" "Elias went into high school this year and no longer needs a sitter." Nodding, he understood. Those two had oodles of experience, while I had none. And when the man's eyes landed on me, I felt unspeakably inept. "Have you ever done this before?" he asked. I shook my head. First interview. Sally decided to ask me a question. "And what makes you think you're capable of being a governess?" "I have a bachelor's in early childhood development," I whispered insecurely. "Education?" the man asked. "That makes you a viable candidate?" Shrugging, I didn't know what to say. I wasn't a viable candidate. Especially now that I was up against them. Both had lots of experience, and the doctor would be foolish not to hire one of them. My bets were on Sally, just because she was a woman. But then again, what would the mother of this child want? And I had no idea why she wasn't mentioned as an interviewer. Surely, the mother of this child wanted to be involved in picking a suitable nanny for her little girl. They might want a man to watch over their child. Maybe they would feel she'd be more protected that way. The guy looks kind of buff. He gave off an air of protection too. A door to the back opened, and another woman stood there. "Mrs. Sally Steiner?" Sally got up and followed her, leaving Manly Jones and me alone. "How old are you?" he asked me. 22. An interview with a competitor before the actual interview. Terrific. "And you?" 43, he said. "I've been doing this type of work since I was 10, raising my younger brothers when our mother overdosed on opiates. We avoided getting sent to a children's home for nearly a year, because I kept things going so well. Nobody knew no one took care of us." I found that hard to believe. "Is that the story you tell?" His dark eyes leveled on mine. "Young lady, that is no story. That is the honest truth." "How'd a 10-year-old pay bills?" I asked, cocking one brow at him. I knew a liar when I heard one. He turned to look out the window. "You would never understand what it was like when I was a kid." "Bills? How can one have bills when one has no home?" "So you took care of your younger siblings as you lived on the street?" I still didn't believe him. "And at 10 years old?" All he did was nod, as he wouldn't look at me anymore. And that bothered me none at all. What did bother me was thinking that this man might get the job. And him taking care of a little girl didn't sit right with me.
Chapter 3. Alex.
I already had 3 days of interviews for the au pair position and had yet to find the perfect one for Tabby. This fourth one has to be the last. With only a couple of weeks left until I started work, I wanted someone right away. That way, Tabby would have time with me around to get used to another person taking care of her. A 50-year-old woman walked into the small interview room. Her graying hair was in a neat bun, and she wore what I'd call typical governess clothing with a stoic expression to match. "Dr. Arlen, I'm Mrs. Steiner." She extended her hand as I rose. Shaking it, I noticed the lack of a smile on her face. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Steiner." Her resume was impeccable. She'd been the governess for many important families in the Seattle area. But I still wasn't sure about her. "Please take a seat." She sat across from me, her hands placed neatly in her lap. "I see you have my resume there in front of you. I'd like to point out my years of experience. The last 4 pages are letters of recommendation from my past employers. All of the children I had the pleasure of helping raise have gone to college. Well, except Elias, but he's still in high school. He'll go as well. My purpose is to compel education upon my charges." I had no idea what the charges were. "Your charges?" She looked at me with dark brown eyes, surrounded by thin lines. "The children I look after, sir." Okay. That told me she wasn't close to the kids she helped raise. "And you like to make sure they seek further education? That wasn't such a bad thing." "I have." She pointed at the resume in front of me again. "If you'll read the first recommendation, I started working with those children when the oldest was only 4. The 3 of them were well versed in the Bible as well as proper behavior. And how about playing? That was more important to me than behaving. Tabby wasn't a bad child in the first place. A time and a place for that are scheduled into each day." She looked me in the eyes. "I've been a nanny for longer than you've been a father. I can help take this great burden off your shoulders, doctor. That way you can do your work. And your wife can as well. I don't have one. And Tabby is not a burden. I tell you what, Mrs. Steiner, I've got your resume, and will study it before making my decision. Thank you for coming." She seemed a bit shocked as she sat there. "So this is it?" I nodded and got up to walk her out. "It is." "I never had such a short interview before, sir." She got up, and I escorted her to the door. "Is there anything else I can answer for you?" I had one more question, not that it would matter, but I wanted to know. "And how are you on corporal punishment?" "Spare the rod, spoil the child," she said quickly. "Thought so." "You have a wonderful day, Mrs. Steiner." I closed the door behind her, not missing the stunned expression she wore. Going back to the table, I tossed her resume aside. No one would be laying a hand on my baby girl. There was a quick knock at the door, and then a tall man opened it and stepped in. I had Manly Jones' resume pulled out of the file. The receptionist had sorted them in the order they would be interviewed. "Mr. Jones, it's nice to meet you." I got up and shook his hand. "You too, Doc," he said with a smoothness that made him seem down to earth. "Please take a seat." I took mine, then looked over his resume. "Seems you've watched over quite a few kids in your time, Manly. How did he get into the babysitting business? And you came to be an au pair. How exactly?" "As you can see on my resume, I was hired for my first nanny job by the mayor of Seattle 10 years ago." He looked incredibly proud. "I was a janitor at the courthouse when we met. He liked the way I interacted with his kids. They were with him a lot after his wife left him. So he gave me my first nanny job. And from there, I stayed in the business as each of my kids grew up." He called them his kids, which is a lot better than them being called charges. "So you've got a knack with kids." "I took care of my younger brothers when I was younger, too." "It's a gift," he said with a smile. "People don't usually think of men as au pairs, but I can do better with kids than lots of women. I think like one, I suppose. Fun is my #1 thing. If my kids are having fun, smiling and laughing, then I've done my job." "That's great. I liked that attitude." Kids aren't meant to just behave and learn. I'd heard far too much from the other candidates I'd interviewed about teaching kids how to behave and making them learn all the time. None had talked about playing and letting them have fun. I looked over his resume to see if he'd taken care of little girls before. My daughter is 3. Do you think you could deal with that? Sure can, he said with certainty. Little Miss Dana was 2 when I worked for the mayor. She wrapped me around her little finger, that's for sure. He sat back and then looked at me with a curious expression. If you don't mind me asking, is the mother around? My wife passed away from cervical cancer a year ago, Manly. I sighed, then went on, I won't lie to you. I wanted to hire a female to take care of Tabby. She needs a female role model in her life. He nodded. I see. Then he snapped his fingers. I've got a sister who could come around to be that female influence. I didn't know if that would be enough. I don't know. Sir, when I worked for the mayor, his wife had split. Those kids didn't have no mama. That proud look came back to his dark eyes. I got my sister doing things with them too. And that helped loads. You can count on me, sir. I'll help your little girl. My sister loves to dote on children. The man seemed genuine, and Tabby would love his playful ways. I tell you what, Manly, let me do this next interview, and then I'll make a decision. You're my top pick right now. He stood up, clapping his hands. That sounds amazing. You've got to interview the last candidate. I have all the confidence in the world you will be giving me a call, Doc. And why's that? I asked, as the next person couldn't be that bad. She's a kid, Doc. No business helping anyone raise a child, but thinks her college degree will help her take care of someone else's kid. He reached out to shake my hand. So, I'll be talking to you soon, sir. Laughing, the guy made me feel great. I'm sure you will. When he left, I heard him laughing his way down the hall, and his laughter made me smile. I liked his outgoing personality, and knew he'd make Tabby's time away from me fun for her. He'd left the door slightly ajar, and the next person stepped up to it. I took the last resume out of the file to find very little listed on it. When the door moved, a young woman came in. Dr. Arlen? That's me. Come on in. I looked at the name on top of the resume. Kyla Rush. She took a seat without offering to shake my hand, and her eyes were glued to the desk. I prefer to be called KY. Socially awkward, I couldn't help but feel for her, as I'd been the same way in my younger years. Okay, KY. It's nice to meet you. Her eyes flashed to mine for only a fraction of a second. You too. I put the resume down, because the only thing on it was her education in early childhood development. Do you like children, KY? She nodded, making the loose bun on top of her head bounce a bit. The bun was thick, her hair was quite long. It was the same color as Jennifer Aniston's, and shined in the light. I do like them. Then she looked into my eyes, and I saw the green in her hazel eyes glisten. I adore them, really. I did some babysitting for my cousins in my teens. It was then I decided to pursue a career revolving around kids. And what do you like doing with kids, KY? Something about the young woman struck me. She hardly wore any makeup. Her skin was creamy and natural. Her lips were a natural pink, and her cheeks had a slight rose hue to them. She was a healthy young woman. The way her eyes danced told me she truly enjoyed children. I love playing with them and watching them when they learn something new. I love talking to them and listening to them tell me things. Kids fascinate me. Their brains are developing at such a rapid rate that they defy imagination. One day they can't speak a word, the next day they're saying dada or mama. It's just a great thing to witness. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I couldn't stop looking into her eyes. So much in them intrigued me. Do you have any siblings, KY? No, sir. I'm an only child. She looked down again, and I fought a powerful urge to lean forward and take her by the chin, to raise her face back up so I could look into those eyes again. She didn't have an ounce of real experience, and she wasn't going to be the right nanny for us. But something told me to give her a shot anyway. Well, KY, can I be honest with you? Her eyes came back to mine. Yes, sir. I'd like my daughter's nanny to have some experience. I pushed the last page of Manley's resume toward her, showing her the many job assignments he'd had. This is typical of the resumes I've seen in the last few days. I understand, sir. She squinted as she looked at the paper in front of her. Can I ask you a question? I suppose so. I didn't see the harm in answering something for her. She looked at me again. I noticed how happy the last guy who left here was. Is that because you've pretty much gone with hiring him? I nodded. Yeah. I saw no reason to lie. The way her eyes cut to the side and her chest rose and fell told me that was troubling to her. Sir, I've got a way of reading people. This isn't my business, but I feel I should tell you this. She bit her lower lip before saying, He's not the person you think he is. Did he tell you, his homeless 10-year-old, taking care of his brothers after his mother overdosed story? No. What is she talking about? Did he tell you that? She nodded. He did. And I didn't believe him. The woman before him knew him. I think he's been a sitter for a while, but I don't trust him. You should know that before hiring him. I know you're not hiring me, but please don't hire him. What the hell?
Chapter 4. Kai.
2 days went by, after what I considered to be the worst interview anyone had done in a million years. So when my cell rang with a number I didn't recognize, I answered it, thinking it was some scam. What? For a moment I heard only silence, then a man asked, KY? His voice smooth, deep and incredibly attractive. I knew who it was right away. Dr. Arlen? Yeah, he said with a chuckle. It's me. Oh, sorry about that. I thought you were some scam caller. My cheeks were heating with embarrassment, and I sat on a crate in the back of the store, pausing from throwing out the trash. I took your advice about the man I was going to hire, he said. Maybe I was wrong about the guy. And after a background check, I learned he's using an alias. On top of that, he's got a police record. He had charges dropped, but only because of this mayor he got to know while working at the courthouse. He had to do mandatory civil service for 6 months after being convicted of theft. I'm glad you checked him out, I said, nodding to myself as I got up to head back inside to get back to work. So, did you find yourself a sitter? I think I have, he said. I figured it was the woman, Sally. She's got a lot of experience. I hope she works out for you. He seemed puzzled as he asked, and when did all this experience occur, may I ask? I don't know. I didn't understand the guy. KY, I picked you, he said. What? I picked you, he said again. Would you like to come over to discuss your salary? My head felt light. Am I dreaming? No, he said with a laugh. I'll send my driver to pick you up. What's the address? I'm at work. I didn't know what to do. Damn, I'm not sure what to do here. Where do you work? He asked. Judy's Grocery, I said as I started heading inside. You know what? I'm going to tell Judy I've got another job and don't need this one anymore. Right? I should do that, right? You should. He laughed, then said, text me your address. I'll give you an hour to get home, and then I'll send my driver to pick you up and bring you here. We've got lots to talk about, and I can't wait for Tabby to meet you." Suddenly, it hit me like a brick. I got the job. I'll do that. Thank you. The rest of that hour blurred by, as I was beyond excited. And when a Lincoln pulled up in front of my apartment, I nearly passed out. The driver stood at the back door, holding it open for me. "Good afternoon, Miss Rush. I'm Stephen, Dr. Arlen's driver. I understand you are the new governess." "I guess I am." I got into the back seat, taking in all the luxury. "Wow. I know." He shut the door, returned to the driver's seat, and off we went. I had no idea where we were going, and texted Carla to let her know. After several minutes, we arrived in the more affluent part of town, and my jaw dropped just a little. The Lincoln then turned into a set of iron gates, and I texting Carla that I'd arrived at my destination and new home. I put the phone away as I looked around in wonder. The mansion loomed ahead of us, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Wow. When the car came to a stop, the driver honked the horn, and the front door opened immediately. Another man came out to the car, opening the door for me. "Hello, Miss Rush. I'm Mr. Randolph, Dr. Arlen's butler. Please come with me." Feeling as if I walked on air, I got out of the car, following the man who looked a lot like of Clark Gable. "I'm KY. "Okay, KY, he said as he led me through one grand room after another. "This way, please. They're over here in Tabby's playroom." "I'm going to need a map of this place," I said in a near whisper as I'd already lost my way. "I'll make you one." The man seemed helpful. "We want you to make this place your home." Oh yeah. I'd forgotten that I would live in this place, now that I was the little girl's nanny. When he opened one of the many doors along a long, wide corridor, I saw the man who interviewed me sitting on the floor, as a little blonde-haired girl skipped around him in a circle, singing like a fairy princess. Dr. Arlen's ice blue eyes found mine, and he smiled with that smile that had taken my breath away the first time I saw it. "KY." He reached out to take his daughter's hand. "Look, Tabby, this is KY, your new babysitter." Shyly, the girl ducked her head as she climbed onto her daddy's lap. I went to them, trying my best to get over my nerves. "Hi, Tabby." Peering at me from under thick dark lashes, she said not one word. But her father did. "She's a little shy. But she'll warm up to you." Taking a deep breath, I tried to get my brain to work. Taking a seat on the floor too, I sat cross-legged just like he did. "Your home is beautiful, Dr. Arlen." Another smile curved his chiseled, caramel-colored lips. "It's your home now too, KY. I'll show you to your suite in a little while, and then Stephen will take you back to your place to retrieve your things. You can move in today. If that's okay." "Yeah." I didn't know how to act. "Sure, Dr. Arlen." "We can't have that," he said. "Call me Alex." I nodded, not knowing how to react. "I feel so weird." "I bet you do." He reached out and lightly patted my shoulder. "You'll get used to this." Trying to ignore the odd sensation that ran through me at his brief touch, I hoped he was right. "I'll try." "Okay, let's go over the ground rules," he said as his daughter buried her face in his broad chest. The man was all muscle. I couldn't recall ever seeing anyone as good-looking as him in real life before. I tried to keep myself from staring. "Rule number 1, whenever you leave this house with my daughter, you let Stephen drive you. He's a former Navy SEAL, and one of our bodyguards. You will never leave this house with my daughter without him. Got it?" Nodding, I assured him I understood. "Totes got it." He moved one hand through his thick wavy dark hair, and I had to concentrate so I didn't sigh at how attractive that was. "Okay. Rule number 2, my daughter's happiness is essential to me. I don't want you to think that spending time holding her, or doing things with her is spoiling her. She's the center of my life, and I always want her to know that. Center, happy, okay to hold her, I said. Got it. No hitting her, ever, he added. And no yelling at her. No cursing in front of her. Lots of hugs, lots of attention, and lots of praise when she does things. It was then that I realized there wasn't a woman around, like a mom or wife. Where's her mom? Back in Spokane, he said as he smoothed his hand over his daughter's silky blonde hair. In a cemetery. We lost her to cancer last year. I put my hand over my mouth as my gasp threatened to escape. I'm so sorry. Then I knew why he wanted his daughter to get so much attention and praise. He was trying his best to make up for the loss of her mother. Looking at them as Tabby wound her arms around her dad's neck, and they hugged each other, I realized that they suffered through so much. So you can understand why I want things the way I do for our child? He asked softly. I can. I had to wipe the tear away from my eye that had escaped. I'll be good to her, I swear to you. Good. That's all I ask. He reached out, pressing his hand on my shoulder again, and how I felt didn't make sense. He touched only my shoulder, yet my tummy went tight, and moisture blossomed in places it hadn't before. I didn't like my reaction, and tried to remember that this man was now my boss. I couldn't look at him with puppy dog eyes. Not that I'd ever looked at anyone like that, ever, but he was different. Not only was he beyond attractive, but he was sweet too, and he smelled awesome. I had no idea anyone could smell that damn good, but Alex did. I wrestled my wandering mind back to business. So what's the pay, boss? His smile came back, and my heart skipped a beat. Well, you're getting free room and board. That means you get to eat whatever you want here. And feel free to tell the chef what you like. His name's Rudy, and you'll find him in the kitchen most of the time. Plus, you get free maid service. Our head maid is Chloe, she'll take care of keeping your rooms cleaned. Rooms? You've got to be kidding me. I only needed the one. Yes, I told you that I've set you up in a suite. He pointed up. All the bedrooms are upstairs. And all of them are suites. They each have a living area, you know, like a living room. And then there's the bedroom. Each one is equipped with twin walk-in closets and a full bathroom. Yours has a balcony too. I didn't know what to think. This is like totes unbelief, you know? Laughing, he nodded. Yeah. I wasn't always this well-to-do. I grew up in a small home with my parents and little brother. My wife had the money. She came from old money and inherited loads of it. And those loads now belong to Tabby and me. And speaking of money, your salary will be dispersed on Fridays by my accountant, who comes by to pay everyone each week. I'm starting you off at $2,000. Wow, I thought I'd only be getting maybe half that much. $2,000 a month? That's more than I expected. Then you're really going to be surprised, he said with a grin that made me melt. It's $2,000 a week, KY. Wait. What? He had to be joking. Are you messing with me? Not at all. His laughter shook his chest, causing Tabby to pull her face from it. Finally, she looked at me. I'm Tabby, she warbled. I'm KY. I liked the way her green eyes sparkled. Do you like to play with dolls? She nodded. Do you? I do. I looked at the toys that were scattered around her playroom. Do you think I can play with some of your toys with you? She nodded, then climbed off her father's lap. I'll get you some. As she walked away from us to get some toys, Alex looked at me, mouthing, "Thank you." I had no idea why he would thank me for doing my job, but I mouthed back, "You're welcome." It was hard to keep from smiling. His cell rang and he got up, pulling it out of his pocket. He answered it, then walked away. And I turned my attention to Tabby, who brought 3 dolls. These are my favorites. She handed one of them to me. It had dark hair and blue eyes. Thank you. I like this one. What's her name? You get to make that up, KY. She sat right down on my lap, facing out as she cradled the other two dolls in her little arms. My babies are Fiona and Fairy. Staying with the first letter of F, I'll call mine Felicity. I put mine in the crook of my arm. Do you like your hair to be braided, Tabby? I don't know, she said as she looked back at me. What does that mean? If we can find a hairbrush, I can show you. Her hair would look adorable in a couple of braids. Alex came back, looking at his daughter on my lap. His eyes met mine. She doesn't do that with anyone but me. I felt like I'd done something wrong. I'm sorry. No, he said as he shook his head. I'm glad. Tabby looked up at him. Daddy, can KY braid my hair? One dark brow cocked at me and he asked, will you be gentle? Of course. I put the baby doll down to show him, easing a section of her hair away from the rest and making a small braid. See, no pulling of hair at all. I've got the tenderest head of anyone I know. I learned how to make pain-free braids a long time ago. Then braid away. He leaned over, running his hand through Tabby's hair. I just don't want anything to ever hurt my baby girl. She'd been hurt enough by losing her mother. The thought made my heart ache. I'll never hurt her, I promise you. I'll be right over there while you two get to know each other. He walked away to take a seat on one of the chairs in the playroom. With his attention on his cell phone, I took a really good look at the man, and the effect he had on me was something I'd ever experienced. From the dark waves of hair that flowed around his face to the slight slope of his narrow waist, everything about him did something for me. I had to learn fast not to let that show.
Chapter 5. Alex.
KY seemed to be settling in just fine. 2 short weeks later, Tabby and KY seemed inseparable. When the two of them stopped by the hospital to visit me on my first day at work, I found myself smiling from ear to ear as soon as I spotted them. I couldn't avoid my attraction to KY. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't deny it. But I managed to keep that magnetism under wraps. She was young, and on top of that, she worked for me. It was a no-no all the way around. Tabby waved her arms as she looked at me, squealing, "Daddy? It's me, Tabby." As I went to them, another doctor came our way. "So this is Tabby." Reagan Dawson was introduced to me that morning, and I told her about my little girl. Tabby jumped into my arms, and I presented her to Reagan. "Tabby, this is Reagan. She works with me." Typical of my daughter, she buried her face in my chest. Reagan just smiled. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Tabby." Then she looked at KY, who seemed taken aback for some reason. "And you must be the au pair." KY nodded. "I'm KY." "Nice to meet you, KY," Reagan said. "I'm sure we'll see lots of each other." KY looked at me. Why? Her expression was a mix of emotions. But I was pretty sure I saw jealousy in the mix. "Because we work together." Reagan looked at KY with a smile, then held up her left hand. "Married." What was that about? Anyway, what has you girls out and about today? I asked. "Tabby wanted to see where you work," KY told me. "And we wanted ice cream. She wants you to join us." I told her you probably couldn't. "A little break wouldn't hurt anything. Come on, let's see what the cafeteria has." Reagan shook her head. "Nope. The ice cream there is not that good. But go over a block south to New Release. It's a cafe, and it's got the best ice cream and burgers. It's lunchtime. Take a break if you'd like to." Kai's eyes went to the floor. It's okay if you don't want to go. But I do, I said. See you later, Reagan. KY followed me as I carried Tabby and headed to the exit. We walked all the way out before she said, "She's pretty." "Who is?" I stopped to let her catch up. "The other doctor," KY said. "I thought you and she were dating." "Nope." It was jealousy in her pretty eyes. "I'm not on the market to date." "Good," came her quick response. Then she went beet red. "I mean, good because you have a lot to get over." Sure she did. Yes, I do. I wasn't ready to do any dating. But the attraction to KY wasn't lessening any. And I couldn't help doing what I was about to do. After lunch, you should take Tabby to your favorite salon to get her hair cut and get yours done too. I'm treating you two to a day of beauty. You don't have to do that, KY said. Then Tabby raised her head. Aha, 'cause I want to get my hair cut, KY. Please? Well, you can. I don't have to get anything done. KY reached up to touch her ponytail. I'd like to see your hair down, KY. Get it cut and get anything else done that you want. It's my treat. I wasn't taking no for an answer. And if they have someone who does makeup, get that done too, and buy whatever it is they use, so you can do it on your own. But, KY tried to protest. But nothing. I'm taking you two out for dinner this evening, to a nice place, and want my girls to look pretty. I clamped my lips shut tight after realizing what I said. KY finally said, okay then. I saw the cafe ahead and went that way, crossing the street. Traffic's kind of bad here. Stay beside me, KY. She hurried to stay at my side as we crossed the busy street. When we got inside, the menu was written on a chalkboard behind the counter. We've got a lot to choose from. Go ahead and tell her what you want, KY. Oh, I'm okay. I don't need anything, she said. That girl just had to be hungry. Then I'll order for you. In the 2 weeks we'd spent together living under the same roof, I'd yet to see that girl eat something. Her curvy figure must have shamed her for some reason, but she looked like $1,000,000. A kid's meal with a cheeseburger and chocolate milk, and 2 double cheeseburgers with fries and cream sodas for us. KY looked away, putting her arms around herself, trying to hide her midsection. I can't eat all that. I bet you can. I handed Tabby to KY to pay for the food. Find us a table, please. Taking Tabby, KY went to a booth in the back. Grabbing a booster seat, she put Tabby in it on one side of the table, then took the seat across from her. As I approached them, I looked at KY, who'd put her arms around herself again. Sliding in next to Tabby, I asked, "Why does it seem like you're insecure about your weight?" Her eyes rolled. Prob because I'm fat. You are not. It's terrible, the way women think they have to weigh next to nothing to be attractive. You're perfect, KY. I am not. I've got thunder thighs. And she looked down at her large chest. Well, too much up top. And don't get me started on my butt. I can't find jeans that fit me right. If they fit my big butt, they don't fit my waist for some reason. How could she not see those were her best assets? You need a new mirror if you think anything is wrong with your body. She looked up at me, and her eyes met mine. You've got muscles on top of muscles. So how can you think my body doesn't have anything wrong with it? Women are supposed to be softer than men. Some women like to have lots of muscle mass, and that was all well and good. I liked my women soft. Not that KY could ever be mine. Oh yeah. Her smile, though slight, made my heart skip a beat. Yeah. I wanted to reach across that table and take her hands in mine and hold them tight. You're really a great beauty, KY. Yeah, Tabby agreed. You really are beautiful, KY. Kai's cheeks went red, but she wasn't about to let the compliment train end there. "You're beautiful too, Tabby." Tabby kissed my cheek. "And you are very handsome, Daddy." "Thank you, Princess." I looked over at KY to see her eyes cast down again. The waitress brought the food, and I picked up my burger, waiting for KY to take a bite of hers first. She smiled as she caught me watching her. "What are you looking at?" "The first bite of food I've ever seen you take." I waited and watched. She took a giant bite. "Happy," she said around her mouthful. "Ecstatic." I looked at Tabby. "Now you, Tabs." She bit into her burger. "So yummy." I took a bite and found mine to be yummy too. "I agree." We ate quietly, as the food was too good. And when I saw the last bite go down Kai's throat, I felt happiness for that simple thing. She was beginning to feel more at home with us. I wanted her to feel that way more than anything I've wanted in a very long time.
End of sneak peek for The Doctor's Nanny, a single dad and nanny romance. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. It helps more than you know.